There is a tablet sitting in the basement of the British Museum right now that most historians will not translate on camera. It was pulled from the ruins of Nineveh in the 1840s, catalogued, photographed, and then quietly moved off the public rotation. The reason given at the time was that the cuneiform was too damaged to read reliably. That was a lie. The cuneiform is not damaged. It has been read. It has been read multiple times by multiple scholars, going back more than 100 years, and every single one of them arrived at the same conclusion. What is written on that tablet contradicts everything you have been taught about what a human being is. The Sumerians did not believe there was one kind of human. They believed there were nine distinct types, 9 bloodlines, 9 categories of soul, each one created for a different purpose, each one carrying different abilities, and each one recognizable by a specific set of signs that anyone could learn to read if they knew what to look for. This was not mythology to them. This was biology. This was, in their words, the design. The tablet catalogs them. It names them. It tells you how they were made, who made them, and what happens when you meet one. And it tells you, in the final broken lines, that in the last age, when the sky opens for the 7th time, only certain types will survive. The rest will be erased. The rest have already been erased before. For most of the last century, this information was treated as a curiosity, something the ancient Mesopotamians made up to explain why some people are kings and some people are slaves. But in the last 20 years, something changed. Geneticists started finding patterns in human DNA that should not be there. Anthropologists started finding skeletons that do not match any known population. And a small number of researchers, working quietly and mostly outside the mainstream, started noticing something even stranger. The 9 types described on that tablet, in language that predates every religion on Earth, match 9 distinct phenotypes that are walking around today. In your city, in your family, in the mirror. By the end of this video, you are going to know which one you are. You are going to know how to spot the others. And you are going to understand why, for 6,000 years, this information has been buried, rewritten, mistranslated, and in some cases literally sealed inside stone boxes to keep it out of your hands. Because if the tablets are right, and I want you to hold that word "if" for now, then the world you think you are living in is not the world you are actually living in. And the reason most people never wake up to that fact is written in plain cuneiform, in line 47 of a tablet that has been on this earth longer than every book you have ever read. Quick pause. And this is something new. For the first time since the 12 codes, there is a second document, the 7 resets. Every time the world was erased, matched against the 9 bloodlines and the signs of the 8th, 4 are already active. Linked below, QR on screen. Back to the video. To understand what you are about to hear, you need to understand where it came from, not the modern version, the original. In 1849, a British diplomat named Austen Henry Layard was digging in the ruins of what he believed to be Nineveh, the last capital of the Assyrian Empire. He had been at it for 4 years. He had already sent back stone reliefs of winged bulls, gates carved with lions, and enough inscribed brick to fill 3 warehouses in London. But that year, in a chamber that had collapsed into itself and was buried under 15 feet of debris, he found something he did not know how to describe. A library, an entire underground library. Room after room, wall after wall, packed floor to ceiling with clay tablets. Some of them intact, some of them broken. Some of them fused together by heat from a fire that had happened more than 2,000 years earlier. And on the shelves of this library, categorized by subject the way a modern librarian would categorize books, were the surviving writings of a civilization that everyone had assumed was extinct. The Sumerians, the people who invented writing, the people who invented the wheel, the people who built the first cities, the first schools, the first laws, the first observatories, the first plumbing, the first calendars, and the first pharmacies. The people whose language was so old that by the time the Assyrians came along and copied their tablets into their own library, the Sumerians themselves had been dead for over 1,000 years. Layard had found the archive. It took another 60 years to translate most of it. The cuneiform script was cracked, character by character, by scholars in London, Berlin, and Paris working from dictionaries the Assyrians had thoughtfully left behind. And what came out of those translations changed the entire timeline of human history. Because the Sumerians did not just write about laws and grain shipments. They wrote about origins. They wrote about who made them. They wrote about the sky people who came down and mixed their blood with the blood of the earth to produce a new kind of creature. They wrote about wars in the heavens, about ships that traveled through the stars, About 7 great teachers who arrived from the water and taught mankind everything worth knowing. And most importantly, for our purposes tonight, they wrote about the design. The design was their word for it. In Sumerian, the term is Nam-Tar, which is usually translated as fate or destiny. But that translation is wrong. It does not mean what happens to you. It means what you are. It means the shape that was set for you before you were born. And the Sumerians believed that when the gods, the ones they called the Anunnaki, sat down to create humans, they did not create one design. They created 9. Now, most people who read Sumerian mythology never encounter this idea. They encounter the story of Enki mixing the blood of a slain god with clay to make the first man. They encounter Adapa, the wise one. They encounter the great flood story that predates the biblical version by more than 1,000 years. But the 9 types, the 9 designs, are almost never taught. They are almost never mentioned in the popular books. And there is a reason for that. And the reason is not that the information is hard to find. The reason is that once you understand what it is saying, you cannot unlearn it. And what it is saying is that the human species is not one species. It is 9. The primary source for the 9 types is a set of tablets known collectively as the Atrahasis composition, along with fragments from the Enuma Elish and a very specific and much less famous document called the Tablet of Destinies. I want to be precise about this. The Tablet of Destinies is referenced in dozens of Sumerian and Babylonian texts. It is described as a physical object. It is described as being fought over, stolen, hidden, and eventually placed in the possession of the god Enlil, then transferred to Marduk, then, according to some fragments, lost. What was written on it, according to the descriptions, was the fate of every living thing, not what would happen to them, what they were made to be. For a long time, scholars assumed the Tablet of Destinies was purely symbolic, a metaphor for divine authority. But in 1974, at the site of Sippar in southern Iraq, archaeologists uncovered a series of clay tablets that appeared to be commentary on the Tablet of Destinies. Not the tablet itself, but a set of teaching documents that described what it contained. And what those teaching documents describe is the 9 types. Each type has a name. Each type has a maker, meaning which of the Anunnaki designed it. Each type has a purpose, meaning why it was designed. Each type has a set of physical characteristics, a set of behavioral tendencies, and a set of what the Sumerians called signs, which are essentially markers you can look for in yourself and in other people to identify which type they are. And here is where it gets uncomfortable, because the 9 types are not equal. They were not made equal. They were made for different purposes. And some of those purposes are, by any modern standard, deeply hierarchical. Some of the types were made to lead, some were made to serve, some were made to teach, some were made to fight. And one of them, the 9th, was not made at all, in the ordinary sense. The 9th one, according to the tablets, is something else entirely. I'm going to walk you through all 9 tonight. I am going to give you the ancient description, the physical signs, the behavioral markers, and the modern equivalent, so that by the time we are done, you will not need me to tell you which one you are. You will already know. You will have known for a long time, probably. You just did not have the vocabulary for it. But before we get into the types, I have to explain something about the framework itself. Because the number 9 is not arbitrary. The Sumerians did not pick 9 because it was a nice round number. They picked 9 because of what they believed about the structure of the universe. The Sumerian cosmos was built on a numerical grid. 3 heavens, 3 earths, 3 underworlds. 9 total layers. Each layer corresponded to a specific god, a specific function, and a specific type of being. The 9 human types were, according to the tablets, mirrors of the 9 cosmic layers. Each type of human was the earthly reflection of one of the cosmic principles. This is why the Sumerians took the categorization so seriously. They were not sorting people into personality types the way modern astrology sorts people into signs. They were identifying which layer of the cosmos each person was rooted in, which frequency they belonged to, which purpose they were carrying inside their blood. And they were not doing this out of curiosity. They were doing this because, according to the tablets, in each great age, one of the types is dominant. One is elevated, one is buried, and the rest arrange themselves in the middle. The age you are living in is defined by which type is on top. And more importantly, the transition between ages, what the tablets call the reset, always involves the collapse of the dominant type and the rise of a new one. This is not a peaceful process. It never has been. The tablets are explicit about that. There have been, according to the source material, 6 of these resets already. The 7th is coming. And the 8th, which is not written on the tablet in ink but is inferred from the mathematical structure of the text, is the one that ends the current cycle entirely and begins something new, or ends everything, depending on which fragment you trust. The scholars do not agree on the final translation, but they do agree on this. Whatever is coming, the type you are will determine what happens to you when it arrives. That is the frame. Now let us get into the specifics. Let us start with what the tablets actually say about how the 9 types came to exist. Because before we can name them, we have to talk about the moment of creation itself. And the moment of creation, according to the Sumerians, is not what you were taught in school. It is not what you were taught in church. It is something much older, much stranger, and much more precise than either of those traditions has ever admitted. Here is what the tablets say, and I want to give this to you in the sequence the tablets themselves use, because the sequence matters. Before there were humans, there were the Anunnaki. That is the standard translation. The word literally means the ones who came down from the sky, or in some readings, the offspring of the prince and the earth. Either translation carries the same implication. They were not from here, they arrived. And when they arrived, according to the tablets, they were already organized into a hierarchy. There were the great ones, the Anunnaki proper, who numbered in the several hundreds. And there were the workers, the Igigi, who numbered in the several thousands. And it was the Igigi who did the actual physical labor of terraforming the planet in those early ages. The tablets are surprisingly specific about what they were doing. They were mining. That is the word the Sumerians used. They were extracting something from the earth, something they needed, and they were doing it in southern Africa, along a river system that the tablets call the Abzu. Modern researchers have identified this region as the area around what is now Zimbabwe and South Africa, where the oldest gold mines in the world have been found, some of them dating back tens of thousands of years, and showing evidence of industrial extraction on a scale that no known human civilization could have produced. For a very long time, according to the tablets, the Igigi did this work. Long enough that they got tired of it, long enough that they rebelled. And it was the rebellion of the Igigi that triggered the creation of humans. Because when the Igigi refused to keep mining, the Anunnaki leadership held a council, and at that council, the god Enki proposed a solution. Make a new creature. Make it strong enough to do the work. Make it smart enough to follow instructions. Make it obedient. And, crucially, make it in our image, but from the materials of this planet, so that it belongs here and stays here. This is where the design comes in. Enki did not just make one creature. He made variants. He experimented. The tablets describe a period of trial and error, of creatures that were malformed, of creatures that could not reproduce, of creatures that were too weak or too strong or too aware. There is a specific tablet, part of the Atrahasis composition, that describes 7 early prototypes that had to be destroyed because they did not work. And then there is a tablet that describes the successful design. The one that was named Lulu, which is the Sumerian word for the primal worker, the first true human, the template from which all subsequent variations were made. But even the successful design was not left alone, because once the Lulu existed and could reproduce, other members of the Anunnaki Council began contributing their own genetic material to create sub-variants. This is where the 9 types emerge. Each of the 9 was contributed to by a different Anunnaki figure, for a different purpose. The tablets name them. Enki, who was the master designer, is credited with the base type. Ninhursag, the birth goddess, is credited with the second. Enlil, the storm god and the political leader of the Anunnaki, is credited with 2 of them, both of which are ruler types. Marduk, the son of Enki who would later dominate Babylonian religion, is credited with 1. Nergal, the god of the underworld, is credited with the most disturbing of the 9. And there are 2, the 8th and the 9th, that are not credited to any named god at all. The tablets simply say that they emerged, that they were not designed, that they came into being through the interaction of the other types with something the tablets refer to only as the outside. The outside is a term that appears in a handful of Sumerian and Akkadian documents, always in a specific context. It is used to describe something that is not part of the created order, something that existed before the Anunnaki, before the cosmos as we know it, and something that occasionally reaches into the ordered world through certain individuals. The 8th and 9th human types, according to the tablets, are the individuals through whom this outside reaches in. They are not accidents. They are not mistakes. But they are also not part of the original design. And they are the reason, according to the more esoteric fragments, that the resets happen at all. I know this is a lot to take in at once. I want you to hold it lightly, all of it, until we get through the 9 types themselves. Because the 9 types are not abstract categories, they are concrete descriptions. When I lay out the physical signs and the behavioral markers, you are going to recognize people you know. You are going to recognize yourself. And then the framework will make sense, because you will be seeing it from the inside instead of the outside. One more thing before we begin. The order matters. The order in which I present the 9 types is not the order they appear in every tablet. Different tablets present them in different orders, depending on the purpose of the document. Some tablets present them in the order they were created, which is the developmental order. Some present them in the order of their cosmic layer, which is the hierarchical order. Some present them in what the Sumerians called the recognition order, which is the order in which they are most easily identified in the general population. I am going to use the recognition order, because that is the order that serves you best if what you want to do is identify which one you are and which ones you are surrounded by. The recognition order starts with the most common and ends with the rarest. Type 1 is the type that most people belong to. Type 9 is the type that, in any given generation, is present in perhaps one person out of 100,000. And in between, the frequency descends steadily, with each type being rarer than the one before it and carrying different implications, different gifts, different burdens. We are going to start with Type 1. The Lulu, the one Enki made first. The one you have almost certainly been told is the entirety of the human species. And once we understand what the Lulu actually is, and what it is not, everything else about this system is going to fall into place. Before I name the first type, I owe you an explanation of one more piece of the framework. Because if you are going to trust what comes next, you need to know why the number is 9, and not 7, not 12, not any of the other sacred numbers that show up all over ancient religion. The 9 is specific. The 9 is chosen. And the 9 has a mathematical origin that the Sumerians laid out in a document that most Assyriologists agree is one of the strangest surviving texts from the ancient world. The document is called the Number of the Divisions. It is inscribed on a series of 6 tablets, all of them recovered from the same room in the Nineveh library that Layard uncovered. The tablets are heavily damaged, but between them, scholars have reconstructed roughly 70% of the text, and the text is essentially a mathematical proof, not a religious statement, not a poem, a proof. The proof begins with the observation that reality, as the Sumerians understood it, is structured in 3s. There are 3 above, 3 below, and 3 in the middle: sky, air, and stars above. Underworld, deep water, and dead earth below. Earth, living water, and living air in the middle. 3 domains, 3 each, 9 total. That is the basic geometry. But the proof goes further. It states that within each of the 9 domains, there is a corresponding form of consciousness, a way of being aware. A frequency, to use a modern term, though the Sumerians use the word amaru, which literally means the shaking of the sound. Each of the 9 frequencies, according to the proof, corresponds to one of the 9 created human types. The type is the earthly expression of the frequency. Your type is which frequency your consciousness is tuned to. And here is where it gets interesting, because the tablets are clear that you did not choose your frequency. It was set at the moment of your conception, based on which of the 9 designs your blood was drawn from. You could not change it if you wanted to. What you can do, according to the tablets, is recognize it. And once you recognize it, you can stop trying to be something you are not and start doing what you were actually made for. That last part is important, because in the Sumerian view, most human unhappiness comes from a single cause. People are living lives that are not aligned with their type. A person made to teach is trying to lead. A person made to serve is trying to rule. A person made to bridge worlds is stuck in a job that requires them to stay in one world, and so on. The tablets are almost gentle about this. They do not say that the misaligned person is doing anything wrong. They say the misaligned person is suffering, and that the suffering is the signal, and that the signal is trying to tell them something. What it is trying to tell them is which type they actually are. There is one more piece of context you need before we get into the types themselves. The Sumerians believed that in each age, the dominant civilization is dominated by one of the 9, and the type that is dominant shapes everything about that civilization. Its politics, its art, its religion, its warfare, its economics. In the current age, according to the tablets, the dominant type is the 5th, the ruler caste, the Shar. This is why the last 5,000 years of human history look the way they look. Kings, emperors, presidents, chief executives, hierarchical power structures, competition for resources, the constant war between rulers and would-be rulers. That is the fifth type running the show. It is not the natural state of humanity. It is the current state, because we are in the age of the Shar. And the Shar is coming to the end of its dominance. The next age, according to the tablets, will be dominated by a different type. Which one? The tablets do not say clearly. Different fragments give different answers. But they all agree that the transition will not be quiet. Now, one more thing about the framework. The 9 types are not sealed compartments. The tablets describe what they call the mixing. Over thousands of years of intermarriage and reproduction, most people alive today are not pure examples of one type. They are dominant in one type but carry traces of others. This is why the recognition process is not simple. It is not like reading a horoscope. It requires you to look at multiple markers, physical and behavioral, and identify which type is dominant. Once you identify the dominant type, the traces become secondary. They add flavor, but they do not change the core. The Sumerian teaching documents include a set of questions that were used, according to the tablets, by initiated priests to help ordinary people identify their type. I'm going to give you those questions, embedded inside the description of each type. So as we go through them, you are going to feel some of them fitting and some of them not fitting. When one of them fits so hard that it feels like it was written for you personally, that is your type. That is the one to pay attention to. The others may add nuance, but the one that hits you in the chest is the one that matters. I want to give you one more warning before we start. The 9 types are not equal in every way. Some of them carry gifts that the modern world rewards heavily. Some of them carry gifts that the modern world does not know how to use, and in some cases actively suppresses. If you turn out to be one of the types that the modern world does not reward, that is not a curse. It is not a failure. It is a signal that you are living in the wrong age for what you are. The tablets are clear on this point. In every age, most of the 9 types are misaligned with the dominant culture. Only one type at a time is dominant. The other 8 are, in various ways, out of season. Being out of season is not a defect. It is the condition of most human beings, most of the time, throughout all of history. What the tablets ask of you is not to change your type. They ask you to know it, and to stop torturing yourself for not being something you were never made to be. That is the frame. That is the whole framework. Now we go into the types themselves. And we start with the one that most people belong to, the one that Enki made first, the foundational design from which all the others were derived, the Lulu, which means, in the Sumerian, the primal one. The Lulu. Type 1, the primal worker, the base template, the one that roughly 70% of every human population, according to the tablets, belongs to. I want to start by saying something that is going to be uncomfortable. The name Lulu, in Sumerian, does not carry the warm associations that it might carry in a modern language. It means, most directly, the one who serves, the one who is made to work. And when the tablets describe the creation of the Lulu, they describe it in terms that are, if you read them without the softening filter that most modern translators apply, deeply utilitarian. Enki made the Lulu to replace the Agigi in the mines. That was the purpose. That was the whole purpose. And once the Lulu was created, the tablets describe a moment of celebration among the Anunnaki, because the mines could keep running, and the Agigi could stop being angry, and the gold, whatever they were doing with the gold, could keep flowing. So the Lulu, at its origin, was designed for a specific function: physical work, reproduction, survival. The tablets describe the original Lulu as being strong, resilient, and capable of learning a specific task and repeating it without complaint. They also describe the original Lulu as being, in a phrase that is difficult to translate cleanly, without the shine. The shine is a Sumerian concept that refers to the inner light that comes from being aware of one's own consciousness. The gods had the shine, the Agigi had the shine. The Lulu, in the original design, did not. The Lulu was, in the language of the tablets, dark inside. Not evil, not bad, just dark, meaning unaware, meaning focused on the outer world and not on the inner one. Now, here is where you have to pay attention, because the tablets are also clear that the original design was modified very early on. Within, according to the timeline, the tablets provide only a few generations of the original Lulu. Enki himself, going against the wishes of the other Anunnaki, added a component to the Lulu that gave them the shine. He gave them awareness. He gave them the capacity for self-reflection. And he did this, according to the story, because he could not stand watching creatures that were essentially like his own children work in the mines without ever knowing why they were there or who they were. This modification is what turned the Lulu from a working animal into a human being. And it is what makes the Lulu, in its modified form, the foundation of every other type. All of the subsequent designs are variations on the modified Lulu. They add capacities. They emphasize certain traits. They tune the frequency in different directions. But underneath all of them is the Lulu template. Strong body, practical mind, focus on the outer world. And now, thanks to Enki, the shine. So who is the Lulu today? What are the signs? How do you recognize one, and how do you recognize yourself if you are one? The physical signs first. The Lulu, in its purest expression, has a specific body type. Not tall, not short, medium in almost every dimension. Solidly built, strong hands, strong back, a capacity for physical work that other types do not have. The Lulu can lift, carry, run, and endure at levels that leave the other types exhausted. This is not a matter of training, it is a matter of design. The Lulu was made for the physical world, and the physical world does not tire them the way it tires others. The face of the Lulu is described in the tablets as being wide, with strong cheekbones and a jaw that comes forward rather than back. The eyes are set apart, giving good peripheral vision. The forehead is not particularly high. The hair, in the original design, was thick and dark, though the tablets acknowledge that as the Lulu spread across the earth, the hair color and skin color varied enormously depending on the environment. The face is honest. That is a word the tablets actually use. Honest, meaning open, meaning what you see is what you get. The Lulu does not have a hidden face. The Lulu does not wear masks well. When a Lulu is angry, you can see it. When a Lulu is happy, you can see that too. When a Lulu is lying, and Lulus can and do lie, you can usually tell. The behavioral signs. The Lulu is grounded. That is the single most important behavioral marker. The Lulu is here, in this world, in this life, focused on the practical questions of survival, reproduction, and community. The Lulu does not spend hours wondering about the meaning of existence. The Lulu does not have long conversations with imaginary friends. The Lulu does not feel called to strange spiritual practices. The Lulu wants to eat well, sleep well, work hard, love their family, and be respected by their neighbors. And when those things are in order, the Lulu is happy. When those things are not in order, the Lulu is unhappy, and the Lulu knows exactly why. The Lulu is loyal. This is another marker. Loyalty to family, loyalty to community, loyalty to tribe. The Lulu will defend the group at cost to themselves. They will not abandon the group even when it would be advantageous to do so. They will not betray the group for money or status. There are, of course, Lulus who behave badly. Every population has its criminals, but the criminal Lulu is an anomaly, and other Lulus will typically drive them out or destroy them. The Lulu is skeptical of abstractions. This one is important, because it explains why the Lulu is often mislabeled by people who are not paying attention. The Lulu does not enjoy long discussions of theory. The Lulu does not enjoy religious sermons that go on for hours. The Lulu does not enjoy philosophical debates. This is not because the Lulu is stupid. It is because the Lulu was designed for the physical world, and abstractions are not physical. To the Lulu, an idea that cannot be tested by lifting it, moving it, cooking it, or using it to build a wall is an idea that is, at best, decorative. The Lulu will politely listen to the philosopher. The Lulu will not remember what the philosopher said the next morning. The Lulu has strong opinions about right and wrong. These opinions are usually not derived from a philosophical system. They come from what the Lulu has seen work and not work in the actual world. If a certain behavior tends to produce bad outcomes, the Lulu considers it wrong. If a certain behavior tends to produce good outcomes, the Lulu considers it right. This is a moral system, and it is a workable one, and it has kept human societies functioning for tens of thousands of years. But it is not the moral system of the higher types, and it can put the Lulu in conflict with them when the higher types try to introduce moral principles that do not immediately track to observable outcomes. Now, the emotional life of the Lulu, because this is the part that gets most misrepresented. The Lulu is often described, in modern popular writing about ancient astronaut theory, as being emotionally shallow. This is completely wrong. The Lulu has as deep an emotional life as any of the other types. The difference is that the Lulu's emotional life is focused on people and events that are physically present in their life. The Lulu loves their spouse, their children, their parents, their siblings, their close friends, with an intensity that is often overwhelming. When one of those people is threatened, the Lulu will do anything to protect them. When one of those people dies, the Lulu grieves in a way that shakes their whole body. but the Lulu does not typically grieve for people they have never met. The Lulu does not typically weep at news reports about disasters in faraway places. Not because they do not care, but because their emotional system was designed to respond to what is in front of them, not to what is happening on the other side of the world. This is not a defect. It is a design feature. In a village of 100 people, which is roughly the environment the Lulu was optimized for, this emotional pattern works beautifully. It creates strong bonds within the group and clear boundaries with what is outside the group. It is only when the Lulu is dropped into a modern environment, where they are constantly bombarded with information about suffering they cannot do anything about, that the pattern starts to look like a defect. The Lulu becomes numb, or the Lulu becomes overwhelmed, or the Lulu simply stops paying attention to the outside world entirely. All three of these are natural responses to being asked to do something the design does not support. The Lulu is sexually direct. This is a marker that shows up in many of the tablets. The Lulu approaches sex the way the Lulu approaches food. It is a physical need. It is a pleasure. It is a bonding activity. The Lulu does not typically overthink it. The Lulu does not typically ritualize it beyond the basic customs of the culture they live in. The Lulu wants a partner they are attracted to. They want that partner to be attracted to them, and they want to enjoy the whole process without a lot of complication. When the Lulu is in a relationship, they are usually loyal. When the Lulu is not in a relationship, they are usually looking for one. There are exceptions, but this is the pattern. Now, the question of dominance. In every age, the tablets say, one type is dominant in the culture. But that does not mean every age is comfortable for the dominant type. The Lulu was the dominant type in most of prehistory. In the era before cities, before writing, before organized states, human societies were run by Lulus, and they were run well. The Lulu was the natural leader of the small band in the small village, because the Lulu was the type that everyone else could trust to make good practical decisions. But when cities arose, and when the great empires began to form, the dominance shifted. The Shar, the ruler caste, which we will get to later, took over, and the Lulu became the base of the pyramid. This is what has been true for the last 5,000 years. The Lulu is still the majority of the population, but the Lulu is no longer the type that runs the show. The Lulu has been running the villages, the farms, the workshops, the factories, the small businesses, while the Shar has been running the governments, the empires, the corporations, and the wars. For the Lulu, this arrangement has been, on the whole, not great. The Lulu has provided the food, the labor, the soldiers, the workers, the mothers, the fathers, and has received in exchange a place in the hierarchy and, when the ruling class is functioning well, a reasonable share of the fruits of civilization. When the ruling class is not functioning well, the Lulu suffers first and most. This is the pattern of the age of the Shar. This is what history looks like when it is written from the top down. The Lulu is now, according to the tablets, approaching a moment of change. As the age of the Shar comes to its end, the Lulu, being the largest group, will play a central role in whatever comes next. The tablets do not say exactly what the Lulu's role will be. Some fragments suggest that the Lulu will rise again and reclaim the dominance they held in prehistory. Other fragments suggest that the Lulu will be transformed by whatever new age is coming, becoming something that is still Lulu at the base, but with new capacities layered on top. Still others suggest that the Lulu will simply endure, as they have always endured, and that whatever the higher types are doing in the transition, the Lulu will keep planting the crops and raising the children and holding the world together at the ground level. If you are a Lulu, none of this should scare you. The Lulu was made to be here. The Lulu belongs here. The Lulu is the type that the earth itself, according to the tablets, most fully accepts. When a Lulu dies, the tablets say, the earth receives them cleanly. There is no lingering. There is no confusion. The body returns to the ground and the shine returns to the source. The Lulu's death is described in the tablets as the most peaceful of all the types, which, if you are a Lulu, is worth knowing. How do you know if you are a Lulu? Ask yourself these questions. Do you feel most yourself when you are doing physical work with your hands? Do you find long philosophical conversations exhausting or annoying rather than energizing? When someone asks you what you would do if you had unlimited money, does your answer involve concrete, physical things, a house, a piece of land, a vehicle, a business you could build, rather than abstract experiences or spiritual journeys? Do you love your family with an intensity that surprises even you? Do you not really understand people who claim to have deep spiritual experiences and secretly suspect they might be lying or exaggerating? Do you find comfort in routine, in familiar places, in the same food you have always eaten, in the same people you have always known? Are you sexually direct and uncomplicated in your desires? Do you have strong practical opinions about how the world works, based on what you have seen with your own eyes, rather than what you have been told by books or experts? If most of those questions are yes for you, you are probably a Lulu. And if you are, I want to say something to you directly. There is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing missing in you. You are not shallow. You are not unspiritual. You are exactly the way you were designed to be. You are the foundation of the human species. You are the reason there is a human species at all, because the higher types cannot survive alone. They need you. They have always needed you. And in the age that is coming, they are going to need you more, not less. But you are not the whole story. There are 8 other types, and each of them is designed for something different, and each of them carries something that you do not carry. So let us keep going. Because if you are not a Lulu, you have been reading yourself out of every description I just gave, and you have been feeling more and more certain that you are something else. Let us find out what type 2, the Igigi descendant. In the Sumerian, this is a difficult one to translate, because the word for this type does not exist as a single word. It exists as a phrase. The phrase is Dumu Igigi, which means the child of the Watchers. And the Watchers, in Sumerian cosmology, are the Igigi themselves. The rebellious workers, the ones who came down from the sky, mined the earth for tens of thousands of years, and then refused to keep doing it. Now, the tablets are careful here. They distinguish between the Igigi themselves, who were not human, and the descendants of the Igigi, who are. Because at some point during the mixing, some of the Igigi took Lulu women as mates. This is a specific event described in a specific tablet, and the tablet is explicit that this was against the wishes of the Anunnaki leadership. Enlil, in particular, was furious. He considered it a violation of the design. He wanted the mixed children to be destroyed. But the mothers, being Lulu, hid the children among the general population, and so the Igigi bloodline was preserved. Diluted, but preserved. If this sounds familiar, it should, because this is the same story, in older form, that shows up in the biblical book of Genesis, in the passage about the sons of God taking the daughters of men. It shows up in even more detail in the book of Enoch, which was excluded from the biblical canon but preserved in the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition. In Enoch, the Watchers are named. There are 200 of them. They come down to Mount Hermon. They swear an oath, and they take human wives. And the children of those unions are, in Enoch's terminology, the Nephilim, the giants, the mighty men of old, men of renown. Sumerian tradition, which predates all of this by thousands of years, tells the same story but with different emphasis. The Sumerian tradition does not focus on the destruction that the Igigi children caused. It focuses on what they were. And what they were, according to the tablets, was different. Physically different, mentally different, emotionally different, spiritually different. They carried in their blood a memory that the pure Lulu did not carry. They remembered, in some deep and nonverbal way, the sky. They remembered being from somewhere else. And this memory, though it did not usually come to the surface, shaped everything about how they lived. The Igigi descendant is the second most common of the 9 types, though it is much less common than the Lulu. Estimates vary depending on which tablets you weight most heavily, but the general consensus among the small number of researchers who take this framework seriously is that roughly 15 to 20% of the population carries dominant Igigi descendant markers. This is the type that includes many of the people you would describe as unusual. Not weird, not off, just unusual, in a way that is hard to pin down. Let me describe the physical signs. The Igigi descendant tends to be taller than average. Not always dramatically so, but there is a height advantage that shows up consistently across populations. The bone structure is slightly different from the Lulu. The head is often, though not always, elongated. Not the dramatic elongation you sometimes see in ancient royal skulls, but a subtle elongation that is easy to miss unless you know to look. The face is longer than the Lulu face. The forehead is higher. The eyes are often larger, and the eye color is more variable, with a higher incidence of light eyes, hazel eyes, gray eyes, unusual combinations. The hands of the Igigi descendant are often long-fingered. The fingers are more tapered than the Lulu hand, which tends toward broader, more square-tipped fingers. Palmistry, which is much older than most people realize and has roots in Sumerian medical practice, considers the long-fingered hand to be a marker of what was called the aerial temperament, the airy nature, which lines up with the Igigi descendants' origin story, since the Igigi came from the sky. The skin of the Igigi descendant is often sensitive, not delicate in an appearance sense, but reactive. They tend to have allergies. They tend to sunburn more easily than the Lulu, even in populations where they and the Lulu share the same skin tone. They tend to react strongly to certain foods. Their bodies seem to be, in some sense, less at home on the earth than the Lulu body is. This is consistent with the tablets, which describe the Igigi descendant as being between worlds. Not fully of the sky, not fully of the earth, something in the middle. The face expression at rest is often unreadable. The Lulu face at rest is open, honest, showing what it is feeling. The Igigi descendant face at rest is often what people call the mask. It is not a deliberate concealment. It is that the face does not naturally reveal what is underneath. Other people, especially Lulus, often find this confusing. They ask the Igigi descendant, "Are you angry? Are you sad? What is wrong?" And the Igigi descendant is usually not angry or sad. They are just thinking. And their face does not perform their thinking in real time the way the Lulu face performs Lulu thinking. Now the behavioral signs, and this is where the Igigi descendant becomes really recognizable. The Igigi descendant is a searcher. From childhood, there is a sense that something is missing, or something is out of place, or something is not quite right about the world. This sense does not go away. The Igigi descendant does not know what they are searching for, but they know they are searching. They read strange books. They ask strange questions. They keep looking up at the sky, even in adulthood, and feeling something they cannot name. Some Igigi descendants become obsessed with astronomy. Some become obsessed with religion, though not in the conventional sense. They usually leave organized religion and go looking for something more primary. Some become artists, chasing a beauty they can sense but not quite touch. Some become scientists, especially in the more speculative branches. Some become drug addicts, chasing chemically what they are trying and failing to find in ordinary consciousness. The searching is the primary marker. If you have felt your whole life that you are looking for something and you do not know what it is, and if that feeling has not gone away, no matter how many times you have tried to talk yourself out of it, you are almost certainly an Igigi descendant. The Lulu does not have this feeling. The Lulu is at home in the world. The Igigi descendant is not. The Igigi descendant has vivid dreams. This is another marker. The Lulu dreams. But Lulu dreams are usually mundane, about the day's events, about people they know. The Igigi descendant dreams strange dreams. Dreams of flying. Dreams of places that do not exist. Dreams of being someone else. Dreams that continue over multiple nights, with the same characters and settings. Some Igigi descendants have what modern psychology calls lucid dreams from early childhood. Without any training, without any technique, they are aware within their dreams. They can direct them. This is a design feature, not a rarity. Roughly half of Igigi descendants have this capacity to some degree. The Igigi descendant has a difficult relationship with authority, not because they are rebellious for the sake of rebellion, though some of them are, but because they can see, more clearly than the Lulu can, when authority is not aligned with anything real. The Lulu tends to accept authority because authority makes practical sense. If the elders say, "Do this," and doing this has always worked, then do this. The Igigi descendant asks why. They want to know the reason. And when the reason is not good, they will not comply. Or they will comply grudgingly. Or they will comply while quietly building a life plan to escape. The Igigi descendant has a complicated relationship with the Lulu. This shows up in every generation. The Igigi descendant is often born into a Lulu family, because Lulu is the majority type and most families are Lulu families. And from a very early age, the Igigi descendant knows they are different from their parents, their siblings, their cousins. They love their family, they may be loved back, but they do not fit. They are not interested in what their family is interested in. They are not comforted by what comforts their family. They ask questions their family does not know how to answer, and eventually stops trying to answer, and eventually finds annoying. Many Igigi descendants leave. They leave the town they were born in. They leave the religion they were raised in. They leave the profession their family expected them to enter. They go looking for a place they fit, and often they do not find one, and they keep moving. This is a documented pattern in every ancient culture that recorded the type. The Sumerians called it the going out. The going out was considered normal, and even necessary for the Igigi descendant. The tablets are gentle about it. They say that the Igigi descendant who does not go out becomes sick. Something in them shrivels. So the going out is not a failure. It is a requirement. The Igigi descendant is often more sensitive to what modern people would call energy. not in a woo-woo sense, in a very practical sense. They walk into a room and can tell within 30 seconds whether the people in it are getting along or not. They meet a person and can tell within a few minutes whether that person is trustworthy or not. They pick up on undercurrents that the Lulu misses. This is not a supernatural capacity. It is a heightened pattern recognition ability that the Igigi descendant carries as part of their design. It works on faces, voices, body language, and the small signals that most people put out without knowing it. The Igigi descendant has a difficult relationship with romantic partnership. The tablets are frank about this. The Igigi descendant often falls in love intensely, and often does not stay in love for long. This is not because the Igigi descendant is shallow. It is because the Igigi descendant is looking for a mirror. They want a partner who reflects the strangeness in them, who confirms that they are not alone in feeling different. When they find such a partner, briefly, they are ecstatic. When the partner turns out to be a Lulu who was performing strangeness to attract them, they crash. And they leave. Or they stay and become miserable. The best matches for an Igigi descendant, according to the tablets, are other Igigi descendants, and certain of the higher types that we will get to later. The worst matches are Lulus, unless the Lulu is unusually secure and can tolerate the Igigi descendant's oddness without feeling threatened by it. This does not mean Lulu-Igigi marriages cannot work. Many of them do, but they require both parties to understand what they are and to make peace with the fact that they will never fully understand each other. The Igigi descendant does not fear death the way the Lulu fears death. The Lulu fears death because death takes them away from the physical world they love. The Igigi descendant, at some deep level, has a sense that the physical world is not the whole story, and that death is not the end of the story. This does not usually manifest as religious belief in any conventional sense. It manifests as a kind of calm about mortality that Lulus often find disturbing. The Igigi descendant on their deathbed is often the one comforting the family, rather than the other way around. Because in some way that they cannot articulate, they know they are going home. Home to somewhere they came from before this life, and are returning to now. The relationship of the Igigi descendant to the current age is complicated. The current age, the age of the Shar, has not been kind to the Igigi descendant. The searching temperament, the questioning temperament, the sensitivity to authority, the tendency to go out and not come back, these are all traits that authoritarian systems try to suppress. And for most of the last 5,000 years, most systems on Earth have been authoritarian to some degree. So the Igigi descendant has spent most of history hiding, blending in, keeping their strangeness private, or being persecuted when their strangeness became too visible. The good news is that as the age of the Shar declines, the space for the Igigi descendant is opening back up. In the last century, the Igigi descendant has become more visible in the culture than at any time in recorded history. They are the writers, the artists, the scientists, the seekers, the eccentric professors, the wandering spiritual teachers, the entrepreneurs who start companies to solve problems that most people do not even know are problems. The Igigi descendant is not going to be the dominant type of the next age. That is not their function, but they are going to be more visible, more accepted, more integrated into the culture than they have been in a very long time. If you are an Igigi descendant, some of this is probably ringing hard for you right now. The sense of not fitting, the searching, the going out, the vivid dreams, the tendency to see through authority, the difficulty with romantic partnership, the strange calm about death. These are the markers. If most of them are you, you are one. And there is something the tablets tell the Igigi descendant specifically. They tell them that their sense of not being from here is correct, that they are, in fact, not from here, that the memory in their blood, the memory of the sky, is real. It is not a fantasy. It is not a coping mechanism for being different. It is a genuine ancestral memory that was encoded in their line when their Igigi ancestor took a Lulu wife tens of thousands of years ago in a mountain valley somewhere in the ancient world. That memory is theirs. It belongs to them. And the tablets say, in one of the most beautiful lines in the entire corpus, that when the Igigi descendant looks at the stars and feels that pull, what they are feeling is the sky remembering them back. That is not a bad line to sit with for a moment. If you are one of them, you already know it is true. But you are not the only one carrying strange blood. The next type carries something older and rarer, and in some ways more dangerous. Let us go there next. But first, we need to pause. Because what I am about to tell you connects to everything we have already discussed, and it also connects to something you probably do not know exists yet. Type 3, the Adapa. And this is the type that the tablets treat with more care, more caution, and more explicit warning than any of the others. Because the Adapa is not just a variation on the Lulu. The Adapa is something new, something the design was reaching toward, and something that, in the end, the Anunnaki decided to limit. The word Adapa comes from a very old Sumerian root that means the one who is joined. Joined to what the tablets do not always specify, but the sense is clear from context. Joined to the higher world, joined to the source, joined to whatever was above the Anunnaki themselves. The Adapa is, in the Sumerian view, the bridge, the type that stands with one foot in the world of ordinary humans and one foot in the world of whatever is behind the world. The origin story of the Adapa is preserved in a specific tablet, called simply the Adapa tablet, which is one of the more complete surviving documents from the ancient Near East. The tablet tells the story of a man named Adapa, who was, according to the tablet, the first of his kind. He was born to Lulu parents. He was raised in a village on the Persian Gulf, and from the earliest age, he was different. Not different in the Igigi descendant sense, of being searching and restless. Different in a way that was hard to describe even to the ones who knew him. He was, the tablet says, wise from birth. He understood things he had not been taught. He spoke words he had not heard. He saw things that were not visible to other eyes. The god Enki, taking notice of Adapa, adopted him. Not literally. But Enki took Adapa under his direct instruction and began teaching him what the tablet calls the deep knowledge. What was in the deep knowledge? The tablet does not fully say. Some of it involved healing. Some of it involved communication with the natural world, understanding what the wind said, what the water said, what the animals said. Some of it involved what we would now call magic, though the Sumerians did not use that word. They used a word that means the working of the joined, which is Adapa's word, referring to the type he represented. The Adapa in the tablet becomes so wise that he attracts the attention of the higher gods. Anu himself, the god of the heavens, summons Adapa to the celestial court, and this is where the tablet takes a strange turn, because Enki warns Adapa before he goes. He tells Adapa that when he arrives, the gods will offer him food and water, and Adapa is not to accept either. The food and water, Enki tells him, are the food of death. If he accepts them, he will die. Adapa follows the instruction. He refuses the food and water. But the tablet then reveals that the food and water were not the food of death. They were the food of eternal life. Enki had lied, or Enki had been wrong, or Enki had, for reasons the tablet does not fully explain, deliberately kept Adapa from becoming immortal. The Anu is confused by Adapa's refusal. He asks why. When Adapa explains, Anu understands what Enki has done, and he laughs. But the laugh is not a happy laugh. It is the laugh of a god who sees that the plan has been thwarted. Anu sends Adapa back to Earth, and the tablet ends there. But the implication is clear. Adapa was supposed to become immortal, to close the loop between the human world and the divine world, and Enki, for his own reasons, prevented it. The Adapa type, in the tablets, is the descendant of Adapa's line, which sounds mythological, but the tablets are clear that Adapa had children, and those children carried what he carried, and their children carried it too, and it has been passed down through mixing and dilution and reemergence ever since. The Adapa type is not created new in each generation. It is inherited. It runs in specific families, specific bloodlines, specific villages, and when it appears in a person, that person carries something that no other type carries, the bridge. The joining, the capacity to stand at the boundary of the ordinary world and see what is on the other side. The Adapa is rare, roughly 3% of the population, on average, though the concentration is much higher in certain communities and certain lineages. If you are one, you probably have a family history of odd relatives, grandparents who saw things, great-aunts who healed people, uncles who dreamed the future. This is not a cultural pattern. It is a genetic pattern, coming out of the same bloodline through the generations, expressing more strongly in some and less strongly in others, but always present. The physical signs of the Adapa, they are subtle. The Adapa often has what the tablets call the veiled face. It is difficult to describe, but people who meet an Adapa often say the same thing, that there is something in the face that seems to belong to someone else, that the face has more than one person in it, that when you look at the Adapa, you sometimes feel like you are being looked at by more than one pair of eyes. This is not spooky. It is just what an Adapa face is like. Most people cannot articulate it. They just say the person seems old, or seems wise. or seems like they have been here before. The eyes of the Adapa are often unusual, deep-set, slightly larger than average, and there is often what people describe as a shine in the eyes, though the shine is not a physical property. It is a quality of attention. The Adapa looks at you as if they are seeing all of you at once, not judging, not analyzing, just seeing. Many people find this unsettling on first meeting. Some find it deeply comforting. The response depends on what the observer is carrying inside. The body of the Adapa is often thinner than average. Not always. But there is a tendency toward the ascetic build. Long limbs, fine bones, sometimes fragile seeming. The tablets note that the Adapa often does not thrive on heavy foods, and often has dietary sensitivities that the Lulu does not have. The Adapa's body seems to be tuned to a lighter frequency of nourishment, which sounds like a modern woo-woo statement but is actually a very old observation. The Sumerian priests who worked with Adapas prescribed specific diets for them, mostly grains and vegetables. Less meat than the Lulu ate, more water, more fruits when available. This was not a moral prescription. It was a medical one. The Adapa body did not process heavy foods well. The Adapa has a specific relationship to sleep. They often sleep less than the Lulu, but they need their sleep to be undisturbed. If an Adapa is woken repeatedly during a night, they will be functionally impaired for days. Their sleep is doing something. The Sumerian understanding was that the Adapa's sleep was when they returned to the higher world for instructions and refreshment. Whether you accept that framing or not, the practical observation is real. The Adapa needs deep, uninterrupted sleep, or they cannot function. Now the behavioral signs. The Adapa is quiet. In social situations, they tend to speak less than others. Not because they are shy, though some are, but because they are listening. They are processing. They are picking up on layers of information that the other participants in the conversation are not aware of. When the Adapa does speak, they often say something that redirects the conversation entirely, something that names what was underneath the conversation, something that people either find deeply insightful or deeply annoying, depending on whether they wanted to be seen or wanted to hide. The Adapa has a gift for what modern people would call psychology, though the Sumerian word was closer to soul reading. The Adapa can look at a person and see, with startling accuracy, what that person is struggling with, what they are avoiding, what they are longing for. This is not telepathy. It is a heightened form of pattern recognition, combined with what appears to be direct perception of something like an emotional field around each person. The Adapa is often sought out for advice, and their advice is often extremely good. But it is also often uncomfortable, because they can see things about you that you have been hiding from yourself. The Adapa is deeply empathic, so deeply that it can be a burden. In a crowd, the Adapa often becomes overwhelmed by the emotional signals coming from all the different people. Many Adapas develop, over the course of their lives, techniques for managing this. They learn to shield themselves. They learn to avoid certain kinds of environments. They learn to leave gatherings early. Others never learn. And they become the kind of people who cannot function in public settings, who retreat, who become recluses. The Sumerian tablets recommend, specifically, that the Adapa spend significant time alone. It is not optional for them. It is a medical necessity. The Adapa often has what modern people would call psychic experiences: precognition, telepathy, communication with animals, sensing the presence of the dead. These experiences begin early and continue throughout life, though many Adapas suppress them because they do not want to be considered strange or crazy. The Sumerian view was that these experiences were normal for the Adapa type, not supernatural, just natural, in the way the Adapa is natural. What was strange was that these experiences did not happen to other types. But for the Adapa, they were part of the daily texture of being alive. The Adapa has a difficult relationship with religion. Almost every Adapa goes through a phase, usually in early adulthood, of intense religious searching. They try one tradition, then another. They read the mystics of every faith. They often become experts in comparative religion. And most of them, eventually, leave organized religion entirely. Not because they lose faith, because they realize that the organized religions are all pointing at the same thing. And they, the Adapa, can see the thing directly, without needing the pointer. The tablets note that the Adapa often becomes a mystic, but rarely a member of any priesthood. Because priesthoods, by their nature, mediate access to what the Adapa has direct access to, and the Adapa does not need the mediation. The Adapa is often physically drawn to specific places, certain mountains, certain bodies of water, certain groves of trees, certain buildings that were built on ancient sites. The tablets speak of the Adapa as being able to sense the memory of the earth in specific locations. They can walk into a room and know that something significant happened there. Without being told, they can walk into a landscape and feel it welcoming them or pushing them away. This is another design feature. The Adapa is sensitive to what the Sumerians called the layers of the earth, meaning the accumulated events and energies that have shaped a place over long periods of time. The Adapa has an unusual relationship with time. Not always, but often. Many Adapas describe a sense that time is not moving forward the way other people experience it. Sometimes it feels compressed. Sometimes it feels expanded. Sometimes it feels like different times are simultaneously present. The tablets do not treat this as an illness. They treat it as a feature. They say that the Adapa is standing at a slightly different angle to time than the other types, and that this angle gives them access to information the other types cannot access, including, in some cases, information about what is coming. The Adapa is often solitary in old age, not because they are lonely, because they have finally learned how to be alone without suffering. The Adapa who reaches old age, in the Sumerian tradition, is a source of wisdom for the entire community. People come from distances to consult with them. They live in small houses, often on the edge of the village, often near water or near a grove of trees, and they receive visitors, and they give counsel, and they die when they are ready. This is what a fully realized Adapa life looks like. It is not what most Adapas actually get in the modern world. Most modern Adapas are struggling. They are trying to be Lulus, working office jobs, raising families, participating in social systems that are not designed for them. They are exhausted. They are anxious. They are often depressed. Many of them do not know why. They have all the pieces of a normal life, and it is not working, and they blame themselves. If you are an Adapa, I want to say this. The problem is not you. The problem is that you have been asked to live like a type you are not. You are not a Lulu. You are not designed to thrive in the modern workplace. You are not designed to be one of many in a crowd. You are designed to stand at the boundary, to see what is on the other side, to bring the seeing back and share it with the people who need it. That is your work. That is what you are for. And if you have never done that work, no wonder you are exhausted. You have been running on the wrong fuel your entire life. How do you know if you are an Adapa? Ask yourself these questions. When you were a child, did you know things you had not been told? Did you understand adults' emotions in a way that seemed to surprise them? Have you always had a sense of being older than your age? Do you find crowds overwhelming to the point of physical illness? Do you have vivid, meaningful dreams that seem to be telling you something? Have you had experiences you could not explain? Encounters with animals that seem to be more than random? Moments of knowing something before it happened? Moments of sensing what someone else was feeling at a distance? Do you feel drawn to specific places without knowing why? Are you sensitive to foods, to environments, to noises, to lights, in ways that other people are not? Have you tried multiple religions or multiple spiritual traditions and left them all, not because you lost faith, but because they were all pointing at something you could feel directly? If most of those are you are almost certainly an Adapa, and you are not broken. You are a specific design being asked to do a specific work, and that work is not the work of the ordinary world. The Adapa is one of the 3 types that the tablets specifically mention as important for what is coming. The Adapa is described as the one who will translate. When the transition happens, whatever the transition turns out to be, the Adapa is the one who will stand at the boundary and help other people understand what is on the other side. This is not a small job. This is not a decorative role. The Adapa is essential to the survival of the transition, and the tablets say so in explicit terms. There is one more thing I want to say about the Adapa before we move on. The Adapa is often lonely in a way that other types do not fully understand. Even other Adapas can be hard to connect with, because they are all off doing their own boundary work in their own ways. The Adapa often does not marry, or marries and the marriage does not last, or has one deep, long love that ends and is never fully replaced. This is the shape of the Adapa life. It is not a tragedy. It is the cost of being what the Adapa is. The bridge is a lonely position. Standing at the boundary means you cannot fully live on either side of it. This is the price. And the reward, if there is one, is the seeing, the knowing, the being of use to the people who need what you have. That is the Adapa. Type 3. Rare, essential, misunderstood, and, in the age that is coming, more important than they have ever been. Now we need to stop for a moment, because before we get to the 4th type, there is something you need to have in your hands. Before we move on to the 4th type, stop. What you just heard about the Adapa bloodline only makes sense next to the 6 resets before it. Every reset wiped one type from the earth. The 8th is loading now. It is all in the 7 resets, linked below. Grab it, come back. QR is on your screen. Type 4, the N priest. And this is where the framework starts to move upward into what the Sumerians considered the elevated types. Not elevated in the sense of morally better, elevated in the sense of being higher on the frequency ladder, which means, in the Sumerian view, being more sensitive to what is above the ordinary world and less anchored to what is below it. The word En in Sumerian is one of the oldest and most sacred words in the language. It is the word for Lord in the specific sense of one who mediates between gods and men. Every major temple in Sumer had its En. The En was not just a priest in the ordinary sense. The En was the channel, the one through whom the god of the temple spoke to the people, and the one through whom the prayers of the people were carried up to the god. The En held the temple. In the political theology of ancient Sumer, the En was often more important than the king. The king ruled the land. The En held the connection to whatever was above the land. Without the En, the connection went dark. Without the connection, the civilization died. The En priest, as a human type, is the design that produced the individuals who could serve as En. This design predates the priesthood as a social institution. The Sumerians believed that the design came first. Certain people were born with the capacity to be an En. The temples were built to give those people a place to do the work they were born for. And when the temples were destroyed, over the millennia, the En priests did not stop being born. They just had no institution to serve, and so they served in whatever way they could find. The En priest is somewhat more common than the Adapa. The tablets estimate roughly 4 to 5% of the population, though again the concentration varies enormously by lineage. And the En priest overlaps with the Adapa in some markers, which can make identification confusing. So I want to be precise about the differences. The Adapa is the boundary walker, the one who stands at the edge and sees across. The En priest is the conduit, the one through whom the higher energies actually flow into the lower world. The Adapa can perceive. The En priest can transmit. These are related but distinct functions. An Adapa can see a healing that needs to happen. An En priest can be the vessel through which the healing actually occurs. An Adapa can perceive a truth about the state of the world. An En priest can bring that truth down into a form that other people can receive and act on. The physical signs of the En priest are subtle but consistent. They tend to have what the tablets call the open forehead, meaning a high forehead, unlined until late in life, with a kind of visible openness to it, as if there is something happening in the space above the eyes that other faces do not have happening. The eyes themselves are often what people describe as clear, though clear is a difficult word to define. The En priest's eyes do not have the deep looking of the Adapa. They have a kind of directness that goes straight through. When an En priest looks at you, you feel seen, but you also feel that something is coming toward you through their eyes. Something warm, something bright, something that is not exactly them. The En priest often has what the tablets call the marked hand. The hand of the En priest tends to have unusual line patterns on the palm. Modern palmistry, which as I mentioned has roots in Sumerian practice, notes the presence of what is called the mystic cross, a specific formation of lines that appears in only a small percentage of hands. This formation is disproportionately common in En priests. If you look at your own palm and see, in the center of it, a small cross or star formed by the intersection of your major lines, you may be an En priest. This is not the only marker, but it is one that shows up often enough to be worth checking. The voice of the En priest is often distinctive. There is a resonance to it, a depth. Even in a light or high voice, there is often a quality that makes people stop and listen. This is why so many En priests, throughout history, have ended up in occupations that involve speaking, public speaking, teaching, singing, broadcasting. The voice carries something, and when an En priest speaks, the room often changes. People pay attention in a way they did not intend to. The En priest often does not realize they are doing this. It is not a trick. It is a design feature. Their voice is a conduit, and what comes through the voice is not just information, it is presence. Now the behavioral signs. The En priest is drawn to service, not in a martyr sense, in a design sense. They cannot help wanting to be of use to other people. Even when they consciously try to be selfish, to pursue their own interests, to build careers focused on personal gain, they find themselves circling back to service, volunteering, mentoring, teaching, helping. It is not a choice they are making. It is what the design does when it is left to itself. The En priest who tries to suppress this and pursue pure self-interest usually ends up profoundly unhappy. The En priest who accepts it and channels it into a specific form of service, whatever that form turns out to be, usually finds themselves living a life that feels right. The end priest often has, from early childhood, a sense of being called, not always in a religious sense, but a sense that they are meant to do something specific, something that matters, something that they will recognize when they find it. This sense does not go away. It is not a phase. It is a structural feature of the design. The end priest who ignores it becomes hollow. The end priest who follows it, even when the path is difficult, becomes filled up with something that other people can feel when they are near. The end priest is often what the tablets call the light bearer. This is a specific term. It refers to the capacity to bring light into dark situations, in a very practical sense. When there is grief in a family, the end priest can walk into the room and change the emotional temperature. When there is confusion in a group, the end priest can help everyone see clearly. When there is despair in a person, the end priest can, sometimes without saying a word, restore their sense of possibility. This is not manipulation. It is not performance. It is what the end priest carries as part of their design, and what flows out of them when they are with people who need it. Now, this sounds nice on paper, but it comes with a cost. The end priest is often exhausted by their own service. They give and give and give, and the giving is what they are for, but the giving depletes them. And unlike the Adapa, who can retreat and recover in solitude, the end priest often has trouble recovering, because the recovery process requires them to be filled back up by something higher, and that filling depends on their ability to stay connected. If they lose the connection, or if the connection weakens, they cannot refill themselves. They can only pour out what they have already been given, and eventually the reservoir empties. This is why, in the ancient world, the end priests were given specific practices, specific rituals, specific times of retreat and refilling. The Sumerian temple system was, in part, an infrastructure for keeping end priests connected. Regular rites, seasonal observances, specific foods, specific music, specific times of silence. All of this was designed to maintain the connection. When the temples were destroyed, that infrastructure was lost. Modern end priests are trying to do the work of the end, but they have no institutional support, no traditional practice, no elders to teach them how to stay connected. Many of them figure it out on their own. Many of them do not, and burn out early. The end priest has an interesting relationship with power. They tend to end up in positions of influence, even when they do not seek them. People trust them. People follow them. People give them authority. And the end priest, in general, uses that authority carefully, because they can feel the weight of what they are being trusted with. But they can also be corrupted. The end priest, who becomes corrupt, who uses their gifts for manipulation and personal gain, is one of the most damaging figures in human history. Cult leaders, false prophets, charismatic tyrants. Many of the most destructive figures in the historical record were corrupted end priests, which is why the ancient tradition placed such strong emphasis on training. The gift was not enough. The gift had to be shaped, disciplined, oriented toward the source. Without training, the end priest was as likely to do harm as good. The end priest often has, throughout life, moments of contact. Direct contact with what the Sumerians called the above, not visions, exactly, though visions can happen. More often, direct knowing. A sudden sense of what to say, or what to do, or where to go. A feeling of being spoken to, though there are no words involved. These moments can happen while awake, while asleep, while in meditation, while in the middle of ordinary tasks. The end priest often describes these moments as being told what to do, told what to say, told to go there, told to speak to that person. The tablets say that these moments are the end priest doing what they were designed to do, receiving instruction from the higher order, and that ignoring the instruction, when it comes, causes the design to go into distress. The end priest has a specific relationship to grief. When someone in their circle dies, the end priest often carries the grief for the whole group. They become the one everyone leans on. They organize the mourning. They speak the words that need to be spoken. They hold the family together. And afterward, alone, they process a level of grief that would break most other types. But they do process it, and they come out the other side able to hold the next grief when it comes. This capacity is not something they trained for. It is part of the design. The end priest is often what modern psychology calls highly sensitive. They pick up on subtle signals. They are affected by environments, by other people's moods, by weather, by lighting, by sound. This sensitivity, unmanaged, becomes a burden. Managed, it becomes their instrument. Because it is through this sensitivity that they receive the information they are designed to receive. The Sumerians did not consider high sensitivity a disorder. They considered it a mark of the design. The end priest child was identified early in the ancient world precisely because they showed this sensitivity, and they were then trained in how to use it rather than being told to suppress it. The end priest is often physically drawn to sacred sites, old churches, old temples, ancient ruins, natural places that were considered holy by earlier peoples. When an end priest visits such a site, they often report feeling something they cannot quite name: a presence, a resonance, a sense that the site is alive in a way that other places are not. This is not imagination. It is the end priest picking up on what the site is still carrying, thousands of years after it was consecrated. Sacred sites, in the Sumerian view, accumulate a kind of memory, and the end priest can read it. The end priest has a difficult time with modern secular culture, not because they are religious in the doctrinal sense. Many end priests are not conventionally religious at all, but because modern secular culture is built on a denial of the very thing the end priest experiences constantly. The end priest feels the sacred all the time. Modern culture insists that the sacred does not exist. This is not a philosophical disagreement for the end priest. It is a daily denial of their own direct experience, and it wears them down. Many end priests, over the course of their lives, gradually build a private world in which their experience is honored, even though the public world does not honor it. Others become bitter. A few become activists, trying to change the public world to make room for what they know. Very few succeed at this, because the public world is not designed to accommodate what they are trying to bring in. If you are an end priest, some of the questions you can ask yourself are these. Have you always felt called to something you could not quite name? Do people naturally come to you with their problems? Even people who barely know you? Do you find yourself in the role of comforter, mediator, or translator in almost every group you are part of? Do you have moments of direct knowing that come from nowhere and turn out to be accurate? Are you affected by the moods of the people around you to a degree that surprises them and sometimes exhausts you? Do you feel something in old churches, old temples, old sacred sites that you do not feel in ordinary buildings? Have you had experiences you would describe as being spoken to, being guided, being told what to do, without any voice being actually audible? Do you feel the sacred as a daily presence, even when you do not have religious language for it? If most of those are you are an end priest, and you are needed. In the age that is coming, you are going to be more needed than you have ever been, because the end priest is the type that keeps the connection open between the human world and whatever is above it. And if the transition happens the way the tablets say it will happen, the connection is going to be tested. It is going to matter enormously whether there are enough end priests in the world, holding the line, keeping the channel clear. That is your work. And even if no one has told you that until now, part of you has always known. That is type 4, the end priest, the channel, the light bearer. Now let us go to the 5th type, which is the one currently running the world. And I mean that literally, the Shar, the ruler caste. And once you see what the Shar is and how they operate, you are going to understand a lot of things about the last 5,000 years that have never quite added up before. Type 5, the Shar, the ruler caste, the type that has been dominant on this planet for the last 5,000 years, and the type whose dominance is currently coming to an end. The word Shar, in Sumerian, means the whole, the completeness, the gathered totality. It is the same root that gives us, in later Semitic languages, the word for king. But the original Sumerian meaning is subtly different. A Shar is not just a ruler. A Shar is a completer. A Shar is the one who gathers the parts and makes them whole. A Shar is the one who takes chaos and imposes order. And this is what the design does. In a person who is a Shar, it looks at scattered elements and it organizes them. It sees a group of people without leadership and it steps forward to lead. It sees a business without direction and it takes the wheel. It sees a nation in decline and it either reforms it or seizes it. The Shar cannot help doing this. It is what the design does. The origin of the Shar type, according to the tablets, is directly attributable to Enlil. Enlil, the god of the storm, was the political head of the Anunnaki Council. He was the one who ruled. He was the one who made decisions. And when the human types were being designed, Enlil insisted on contributing his own signature to 2 of them. The Shar was one. The Alad, which we will get to later, was the other. Enlil wanted to make sure that the human population would be capable of self-governance, that there would be, in every generation, individuals who could take charge and keep the whole system running without constant intervention from above. The Shar was Enlil's answer to that need. The result is a type that carries specific gifts and specific dangers. The gifts include organizational intelligence, strategic vision, the capacity to make difficult decisions under pressure, the capacity to command loyalty from other people, and the capacity to see the entire system rather than just the parts. The dangers include hunger for power, difficulty with limits, tendency toward isolation from the ordinary emotional life of the people they rule, and, in extreme cases, the willingness to sacrifice individuals for the sake of the whole. These gifts and dangers show up in every Shar. The training and the character of the individual determine which of them ends up dominating. The Shar makes up roughly 2% of the population, so they are rare in absolute terms, but they concentrate at the top of hierarchies. In any large organization, the leadership positions are almost always held by Shars. In any political system, the actual power holders are almost always Shars. In any military, the generals are Shars. In any business empire, the founder was almost certainly a Shar. This is not because Shars are the only ones capable of leadership. It is because Shars are wired to seek leadership positions and to hold them, while most other types are wired to do other things and to let the Shar take the lead. The physical signs. The Shar is often physically striking, not always handsome or beautiful in a conventional sense, but there is a presence to them. When a Shar walks into a room, the room notices. This is not a matter of size, though Shars often are larger than average, either in height or in muscle mass or in the sheer visual weight they carry. It is a matter of the way they occupy space. The Shar takes up more room than their body actually requires. Other people give them room. It happens automatically, without conscious decision. The Shar's presence pushes outward, and the presence of other people pulls inward around them. The face of the Shar is often what the tablets call the composed face, meaning a face that is under control. The Shar does not reveal what they are feeling unless they choose to. In this way, they are similar to the Igigi descendant, whose face at rest is also often unreadable. But the Shar's composure is different from the Igigi descendant's opacity. The Shar's face is composed because the Shar has learned, early, that revealing emotion is a disadvantage. Emotion is currency. It is spent strategically. It is not given away for free. The Shar face is a face that is holding cards close. The eyes of the Shar are often penetrating. They look directly at people. They do not look away first. In a staring contest with a Shar, most other types lose. Not because the Shar is trying to win, but because the Shar's design does not include the impulse to yield eye contact. They hold it as naturally as breathing. And this holding of eye contact often unsettles the other types, who feel measured and evaluated whenever the Shar looks at them. The Shar has strong jaw and cheekbones. This is a consistent physical marker. The bone structure is definite. There is nothing soft or ambiguous about it. The tablets describe it as the built face. The face that was constructed to lead. Whether we take that description literally or metaphorically, the physical pattern is real. If you look at photographs of political leaders, business leaders, military leaders, throughout history, you will see this face type recurring across every culture and every era. Strong jaw, definite cheekbones. Composed expression, direct eyes. Now the behavioral signs. And this is where the Shar becomes really identifiable. The Shar is comfortable making decisions. This is the single most defining behavioral marker. Most people, when faced with a difficult decision, hesitate. They gather more information. They consult others. They look for reasons to delay. The Shar does not do this. The Shar gathers information quickly, weighs it fast, and decides. And once they have decided, they act. They do not second guess. They do not agonize. They do not return to the decision after it has been made, unless new information forces a reconsideration. This capacity is not learned. It is native. From childhood, the Shar is the one who says, "We should do this," and everyone else says, "Yes, let us do that." The Shar assumes leadership without being asked. In any group without a designated leader, the Shar will emerge as the leader within minutes. They will not necessarily do this consciously. They will simply start organizing, asking who is doing what, suggesting next steps, proposing schedules. And the group, most of the time, will follow, because someone needs to lead, and here is someone doing it, and everyone can relax now. The Shar has a natural sense of hierarchy. They know, immediately, who in a room is a peer, who is above them, and who is below them. They calibrate their behavior accordingly. They do not treat everyone the same. This is not snobbery. It is a design feature. The Shar's mind organizes social space hierarchically, and they navigate it based on that organization. Other types often find this offensive. The Lulu in particular, tends to believe that all people should be treated the same. The Shar cannot do this. It is not how their design works. The Shar is comfortable with conflict, not necessarily enjoying conflict, but not fleeing from it and not being paralyzed by it. When a fight needs to happen, the Shar can fight. When a difficult conversation needs to be had, the Shar can have it. When someone needs to be fired, or expelled, or challenged, the Shar can do it. This is one of the most valuable traits in leadership, and it is one that most other types do not have to the same degree. The End Priest can have hard conversations, but they suffer through them. The Shar has them and moves on. The Shar can be ruthless. This is the shadow side. When the Shar decides that something must happen, they can pursue it past the point where other types would have stopped. They can override their own emotions. They can override the emotions of others. They can, in extreme cases, override the interests of individuals for the sake of the outcome. This is what makes the great Shars great, and it is also what makes the terrible Shars terrible. History is full of both. The Shar who used their ruthlessness to build lasting civilizations, and the Shar who used it to destroy them. The Shar has a specific relationship to loneliness. They are often profoundly alone, even in the middle of the people who serve them. The Shar cannot be fully seen by the people below them, because the people below them are looking at the position, not the person. The Shar cannot be fully seen by the people above them, if there are any, because those people are competitors. The Shar cannot be fully seen by their peers, because their peers are also competitors. The only place a Shar can be seen is in private, with someone who has no stake in their position. This is why so many of the great Shars, throughout history, had a single trusted advisor, or a single beloved spouse, or a single friend from before their rise to power. That one person was the entire private world of the Shar. And when that person was lost, whether through death or betrayal or distance, the Shar often broke. The Shar has a difficult relationship with love, not because they cannot love. They can, and often love deeply. But the Shar is used to being served, and love is not a service. Love is a mutual exposure, and the Shar is not designed for mutual exposure. They are designed for command. Many Shars solve this by taking partners who are content to serve, who do not require the Shar to be exposed to them. These relationships can last a long time, but they are not usually deeply satisfying to either party. The Shar, who marries another Shar, has an even harder path. 2 Shars in one household is a struggle. It requires both of them to consciously override their design, or to divide their domains so cleanly that they are effectively running separate empires within the same home. The Shar is often lonely at the top. This is a cliché, but it is true, and the tablets predicted it 3,000 years ago. The Shar, who has climbed as high as they can climb, who has achieved everything they set out to achieve, often finds that the achievement is empty. That the throne they wanted turns out to be a chair like any other. That the power they craved has cost them things they did not know they would miss until they were gone. Many great Shars, in the late stages of their rule, become philosophical. They start to wonder what it was all for. Some find peace in this wondering. Many do not. Many die still gripping the throne, because letting go of it would mean facing the question of who they are without it, and they do not know the answer. The Shar is what history has been about. For the last 5,000 years, the story of civilization has been the story of Shars, their conquests, their empires, their dynasties, their falls. Everything you read in the history books is Shar history, because the Shar was the dominant type of this age. The other types were doing what they were doing, but they did it in the shadow of the Shar. The Lulu farmed the fields, the Adapa healed and translated, the End Priest kept the temples going, the Igigi descendant wrote the strange books and made the strange art, but the Shar ran the show, named the streets, decided the wars, wrote the laws. Now the age of the Shar is ending, not overnight, not in a way that anyone alive is going to see complete in their own lifetime. But the tablets are clear that the transition has begun, and the signs of it are visible if you know what to look for. Political legitimacy is collapsing worldwide. Traditional forms of authority are being questioned in ways they have not been questioned in centuries. The tools of communication are moving out of the hands of the ruling class and into the hands of the general population, faster than the ruling class can adapt. The next dominant type, whichever one it turns out to be, is starting to emerge, and the Shar is starting to feel it. Which is why, if you have been watching the actual behavior of political leaders around the world over the last decade or so, you have seen a rising level of what looks like desperation. The Shar can sense that the throne is shaking. They cannot yet see who is coming to replace them, but they know something is coming. If you are a Shar, this is going to be a hard time to live through. Not because you will be destroyed, though some will, but because the design you carry is not going to be as effective or as rewarded as it has been. The Shar's gifts require a hierarchical world to function within. As the hierarchy weakens, the Shar has to work harder to maintain their position, and the position itself provides less of what the Shar's design is hungry for. Many Shars, in the coming years, will find themselves in a situation the design has not prepared them for. They will need to adapt. Some will, many will not. But you are also not going to disappear. The Shar is essential to human civilization. Even in the coming age, when whichever type takes over the dominant position, the Shar will still be needed. Someone has to run things. Someone has to make the hard decisions. Someone has to hold the whole together. The Shar was designed for this, and no other type can fully replace them. What is changing is not whether Shars will exist. It is whether Shars will dominate the culture the way they have dominated it up until now. How do you know if you are a Shar? Ask yourself these questions. From childhood, have you naturally taken charge in group situations without having to be asked? Do you find decision-making easy rather than agonizing, even for large decisions with serious consequences? Do you feel comfortable in situations where other people are looking to you for direction, and uncomfortable in situations where you have to look to others? Do you find yourself organizing spaces, projects, and events without being invited to organize them? Do you have a sense of what needs to happen in almost every situation, and a low tolerance for delay in making it happen? Are you comfortable with conflict when the conflict is necessary? Can you fire people, break off relationships, or end situations that need to be ended without extended emotional processing? Do you understand hierarchy intuitively, and do you find yourself calibrating your behavior differently for people above you, below you, and beside you in the pecking order? Do you feel restless when you are not in a position of authority and settled when you are? If most of those are you are a Shar, and you should know a few things. You should know that your design is powerful and comes with corresponding responsibilities. The Shar's gifts are not for personal glory. They are for the maintenance of the whole. The Shars who use their gifts for the maintenance of the whole are the ones history remembers well. The Shars who use their gifts for personal accumulation are the ones history remembers badly, if it remembers them at all. You have a choice about which kind of Shar you become. That choice is more important than any other choice you will make. You should know that your loneliness is real and is not going away. The design of the Shar includes a certain isolation from other types. You cannot fix this by trying to be more like them. You can only manage it by finding the small number of people who can actually see you and building your inner life around those relationships, however few they are. You should know that the age is changing. Your gifts will still matter, but they will need to be exercised differently than the Shars of the last 5,000 years have exercised them. The old models of command are becoming obsolete. New models are emerging, but they are not fully formed yet. You are going to have to figure some of this out yourself in your lifetime. And how well you figure it out will determine how effective you can be in whatever comes next. That is the Shar. Type 5, the one currently at the top, the one whose dominance is ending, the one who is going to have to adapt or be replaced in the age that is now beginning. Let us go to Type 6, which is the type most closely associated with what modern people would call intellectual life, though the ancient meaning was much richer than what we now mean by that term. Type 6, the Umanu, and this is the type that carries what the Sumerians considered the most sacred function of any human being, apart from the end priest, because the Umanu was the keeper of knowledge, not the acquirer of knowledge, though the Umanu acquires plenty, the keeper, the one who holds what has been learned and passes it down. The word Umanu, in Sumerian and later Akkadian, is one of the most important professional titles in the ancient world. It is usually translated as scholar, or scribe, or master, but the fuller meaning is closer to master of the tradition. The Umanu was the person who knew the accumulated wisdom of the civilization and could transmit it accurately to the next generation. In a world without printing presses, without mass literacy, without the internet, the Umanu was the vessel through which knowledge survived across time. If the Umanu died before passing on what they knew, the knowledge was lost, sometimes for centuries, sometimes forever. The Sumerians took the training of Umanus extremely seriously. Boys and, less commonly, girls who showed the markers of the type were identified early and placed in special schools called the tablet houses. The training was intense. 15 years, sometimes 20. Not just memorization, though memorization was a huge component. The Umanu was trained to understand what they memorized, to see the connections between different bodies of knowledge, to recognize when a piece of information was accurate and when it was corrupted, and to know how to teach it to the next generation. A fully trained Umanu was not just a librarian, They were a living library and a living school and a living archive, all at once. The design of the Umanu, according to the tablets, was contributed by Nabu, the god of writing and scribal wisdom. Nabu was the son of Marduk and was considered the divine patron of intellectual life. The Umanu type carries Nabu's signature in specific ways: high capacity for memory, high capacity for pattern recognition across different domains, deep and abiding love of the written word, and, importantly, an almost religious respect for the accuracy of what is transmitted. The Umanu does not casually change what they have been taught. They preserve it, they protect it, and when they modify it, they do so carefully, with awareness of what they are doing and why. The Umanu is roughly 4% of the population, not as rare as the Adapa or the Shar, but rarer than the Igigi descendant, and, in the current age, extremely visible because modern culture has, in many ways, become organized around the products of Umanu labor. Universities, libraries, publishing houses, research institutions, all of these are Umanu domains, but the Umanu themselves are often invisible even in these institutions. They are the librarians, the archivists, the fact-checkers, the copy editors, the researchers who do the actual work behind the scholars whose names are on the books. The dominant type of the age, the Shar, gets the recognition. The Umanu keeps the machinery running. The physical signs of the Umanu: they are often smaller than average, not always, but there is a tendency toward the compact body. Efficient movements, not much wasted energy, the Umanu conserves. This is a lifelong pattern. The Umanu who lives a long life tends to age well physically because they have not squandered their vitality on anything unnecessary. Many Umanus live into their 90s and remain sharp until near the end. This is a known pattern in the historical record. The great scholars of every culture have disproportionately reached extreme old age. The head of the Umanu is often large in proportion to the body. This is a marker the tablets specifically note. The forehead is high. The skull is often what modern craniologists would call dolichocephalic, meaning longer front to back than side to side. The eyes are close set. The gaze is intense but often narrow, meaning it locks onto one thing at a time rather than scanning broadly. When an Umanu is reading or thinking, they can hold that focus for hours. Other types find this focus intimidating. It looks like a kind of consumption, and in a sense, it is. The Umanu is consuming information, converting it into memory, cross-referencing it with what they already know, storing it for later retrieval. The voice of the Umanu is often quieter than average, not weak, but controlled. The Umanu does not throw their voice around. They speak when they have something specific to say, and they stop speaking when they have said it. They do not fill silences. They do not perform. This is why, in group conversations, the Umanu is often overlooked. They are quiet. Other people are louder. But when the Umanu speaks, if you are paying attention, what they say is often the most substantive thing that has been said in the entire conversation. Now, the behavioral signs. The Umanu is oriented toward the past. This is a defining marker. Where the Igigi descendant is oriented toward the future and toward what has not yet happened, the Umanu is oriented toward what has already happened, not stuck in the past, but drawing from it, studying it, looking for what it can teach. The Umanu believes, on some deep level, that most of what humans need to know has already been figured out by earlier humans and is available in the record if only the record is preserved and studied correctly. This is not a conservative belief in the political sense. It is a belief about the structure of knowledge. And it explains why the Umanu is drawn to old books, old traditions, old languages, old skills. The old holds what is worth holding, in the Umanu's view. The new is mostly just recombination of the old, and often not as well done. The Umanu is a collector. Books, mostly. Or the equivalent. In the ancient world, tablets. In the medieval world, manuscripts. In the modern world, books, journals, articles, and increasingly digital files. The Umanu accumulates written material. They cannot help it. They walk past a bookstore and go in. They see a library sale and stop. They inherit a relative's book collection and treat it as a treasure. This accumulation is not consumerism. It is a design feature. The Umanu is a storehouse, and storehouses accumulate. The Umanu is precise. This is another core marker. They speak precisely. They write precisely. They think precisely. Vagueness bothers them. When someone says something imprecise, the Umanu often feels compelled to correct it, and often does, even at the cost of social smoothness. This can make them difficult to be around for people who value social smoothness above precision. Other Umanus find them a relief. The Umanu is a teacher, whether or not they are professionally in teaching. They cannot help transmitting what they know. In every gathering, they end up explaining something to somebody. They correct misinformation, they add context, they provide sources. They are the friends people call to check facts. They are the family members who write out the family tree. They are the co-workers who train the new hires because they know the systems better than anyone else. This teaching function is deep in the design. It is not a chosen career. It is a way of being. The Umanu is sometimes accused of being dry, or pedantic, or lacking in imagination. Some Umanis are all of those things. But the accusation misses what the Umanu is for. The Umanu is not supposed to be the person generating new imagination. The Umanu is supposed to be the person who holds what has already been imagined and passes it forward accurately. Without the Umanu, the culture forgets. And a culture that forgets what it has learned has to relearn everything from scratch in every generation, which is what happens in Dark Ages. The Umanu is the type that prevents Dark Ages, and, when Dark Ages happen anyway, is the type that ends them by rediscovering what was lost. The Umanu has a specific relationship to authority. They respect it, but in a very particular way. They respect the authority of the source, not the authority of the office. If a Shar issues a decree that contradicts what the historical record shows to be true, the Umanu will follow the decree publicly, if they must, but they will note the contradiction in their private records. They keep track. They preserve. They wait for the moment when the record can be brought back to bear on the situation. This is why, in every totalitarian regime in history, the Umanu have been quietly dangerous. They do not usually rebel openly, but they remember, and when the regime falls, and the historians go looking for what actually happened, the Umanis are the ones who kept the accurate record. The Umanu has a difficult relationship with the modern information environment. On the one hand, they are living in a golden age of access. There has never been so much material available to so many people. On the other hand, the sheer volume of new material is overwhelming even the Umanu's capacity. And the deterioration of standards of accuracy in modern publishing means that the Umanu is constantly having to sort signal from noise at a rate that the design was not optimized for. Many modern Umanis feel that the information environment is degrading rapidly, not because there is less true material available, but because the ratio of true to false, of careful to careless, is getting worse over time. And the Umanu's inner monitor for this is sensitive. They can feel the degradation, and it distresses them, and they often do not have words to explain why. The Umanu is romantically often solitary, or married to another Umanu, or married to someone who genuinely respects their work and leaves them to it. The Umanu does not usually want a passionate operatic marriage. They want a steady partnership with someone who understands that the Umanu's inner life is largely absorbed in their material. Many Umanu marriages are, from the outside, quiet almost to the point of invisibility. The couple works together, reads together, travels occasionally to visit archives or historical sites, and lives a life that other types would find dull. To the Umanu, this is not dull. This is the good life. The Umanu has a specific relationship to death. They fear it less than most types, because they have made peace with the fact that they will not know how the story ends. The Umanu, more than any other type, is aware that the record continues after their own death. What they have collected will be inherited, or dispersed, or preserved, or lost, and they will not be around to know which. This awareness gives them a certain philosophical calm about mortality. They do what they can while they are here. They pass on what they can pass on, and they trust, or hope, that the next Umanu in the line will pick up the work. The Umanu in the coming age is going to be important. If the transition is anything like what the tablets describe, there is going to be enormous pressure on the historical record. Some of that pressure will come from Shars trying to rewrite the story for their own purposes. Some will come from popular movements trying to erase what they do not want to remember. Some will come from technological changes that make old formats of storage obsolete before the new formats are stable. Through all of this, the Umanu will be the type that holds the line. Not visibly, not gloriously, just steadily, keeping the record, protecting what needs to be protected, transmitting what needs to be transmitted. When historians look back at this period, in whatever comes after, they will find that the Umanis of the current era were doing quiet work of enormous importance. And most of them did not know they were doing it. They just did what their design told them to do. If you are an Umanu, you know it, probably, though you may not have had the word for it. You have always been the one who remembered things. You have always been drawn to books, to records, to accurate accounts of what happened. You have always been quietly annoyed by imprecision, by casual rewriting of history, by the way people mangle facts they should be careful with. You have always felt, at some deep level, that preservation is important, that transmission is important, that the accumulated knowledge of the past is a treasure and not a burden. How do you know for sure? Ask yourself these questions. Do you have a substantial personal library or archive of some kind that you have built up over many years? Do you find yourself remembering details of things you read years ago, sometimes with startling accuracy? Are you often the person in your family or workplace who is called on to verify facts, to remember procedures, to explain how things work? Do you feel physical discomfort when you encounter significant misinformation, especially about topics you care about? Are you drawn to old languages, old texts, old traditions, old skills that most people no longer practice? Do you prefer written communication to spoken? Do you feel that most modern culture is somewhat superficial compared to older cultures? Are you happy alone with your work for extended periods, in a way that other people find surprising? If most of those are you are an umanu, and the age that is coming is going to need you, because the record is the thing that will be preserved through the transition, and the record only survives if there are people to keep it. That is your work. It has always been your work, and it matters more now than it has mattered in a very long time. That is type 6, the umanu, the keeper of knowledge, the transmitter of tradition, the quiet, precise, essential type that most cultures ignore until they need it desperately. Now let us move on to type 7, which is one of the 2 types that Enlil designed himself, and one of the most interesting of all the 9, because it is a type that does not fit neatly into any modern category and yet is walking around in every population on Earth. The Alad, the hybrid guardian. Type 7, the Alad. And this is one of the most misunderstood of the 9 types, because the modern world has almost completely lost the vocabulary for what the Alad is. The word Alad, in Sumerian, is related to a whole family of words that describe protective spirits and guardian beings. In the later Assyrian and Babylonian texts, the word appears as Aladlamu, which is the name for the massive winged bull statues that guarded the gates of the palaces and temples. Those statues were not decorative. They were representations of a specific class of being, a guardian being, that stood at the boundary between the safe interior and the dangerous exterior, and kept the exterior from entering the interior without permission. That is what an Alad is, in the cosmic sense, a guardian, and that is what the Alad type is, in the human sense. The Alad is the guardian type, the one who was designed, according to the tablets, specifically to protect the other types from what would otherwise destroy them. Enlil, the same god who designed the Shar, designed the Alad. And Enlil designed them in pairs, because the Shar and the Alad were meant to work together. The Shar would rule, the Alad would guard, the Shar would build, the Alad would defend. In the original design, no Shar was supposed to be without an Alad by their side, and no Alad was supposed to be without a Shar to serve. This partnership has, over the millennia, broken down repeatedly. There are stretches of history when the Shars and the Alads have worked together perfectly, and civilization has flourished. There are stretches when the Shars have tried to dispose of the Alads, and have then found themselves defenseless when the enemies they made came for them. There are stretches when the Alads have overthrown the Shars, and taken the throne themselves, and found that the throne does not fit them well, because they are not designed to rule but to protect. All 3 of these patterns have played out many times, in many places, throughout the recorded history of the ancient Near East and, if you know how to read for it, in every civilization since. The Alad is roughly 3% of the population. Not the rarest of the types, but rare enough that in any random group of 100 people, you will typically have only 2 or 3 of them. And they are often not immediately visible, because the Alad is not designed to draw attention to themselves. They are designed to stand at the perimeter and watch. That is what they are for. The physical signs of the Alad are among the most distinctive of the 9 types. The Alad is strong. Not just strong for their size. Strong absolutely. The Alad in prime physical condition is often startlingly strong, even by the standards of trained athletes. The strength is not necessarily visible in an obvious way. Some Alads are massively built. Others are lean, wiry, deceptively light-looking. But when they exert themselves, the strength is there, and it is often more than observers expected. This is a design feature. The Guardian has to be capable of physical defense at short notice, and the strength was built in. The Alad tends to have unusual endurance in cold, in heat, in pain, in hunger. The Alad body can push through conditions that would incapacitate other types. Elite military special forces, throughout history, have been staffed disproportionately by Alads. This is not a coincidence. The physical demands of that work require the specific body type that the Alad carries. And the mental demands, which we will get to, require the specific temperament as well. The face of the Alad is often what the tablets call the watching face. It is a face that is scanning, even when the body is at rest. The eyes move, they take in the environment, they notice details. They register threats and non-threats with almost no time delay. When you meet an Alad and they look at you, you can often feel yourself being assessed. Not judged in a moral sense. Assessed. Where are you standing? What is your body language? What are your hands doing? What is behind you? What is your relationship to the space you are both in? All of this is happening in the Alad's mind in a matter of seconds, and much of it is happening without conscious awareness. It is what the design does. The Alad has strong bones, the skull is often thick, the jaw is often prominent, though not always in the same way as the Shar's jaw. The Shar's jaw is decisive. The Alad's jaw is set, meaning locked, meaning ready. The eyebrows of the Alad are often heavy, giving a slightly hooded appearance to the eyes. This is functional. The heavy brow protects the eye from glare, from impact, from the small physical threats that would compromise vision in a fight. The design is optimized for the guardian function, and the face reflects that optimization down to the details. The body of the Alad is often marked by physical experience. Scars, calluses, healed injuries. Alads tend to have hard lives, physically speaking. They put themselves in situations where the body takes damage, and they heal well. Alad healing is fast. Alad recovery from injury is fast. Alad bodies knit back together in ways that sometimes surprise doctors. This is another design feature. The guardian needs to be able to be hurt and to keep going. Now the behavioral signs. The Alad is loyal. This is the deepest behavioral marker. The Alad, once they have chosen who or what to protect, will not abandon it. Not for money, not for pain, not for social pressure, not for changes in circumstance. The Alad's loyalty is not conditional, it is structural. Once given, it holds until either the Alad dies or the object of the loyalty proves itself to be something the Alad cannot in good conscience continue to protect. The second case is rare, and when it happens, it breaks the Alad, because their entire design is oriented toward the loyalty, and having to withdraw the loyalty is against the grain of everything they are. The Alad is watchful. Even in relaxed situations, part of the Alad's mind is monitoring the environment. They notice when someone new enters the room. They notice when the sound level changes. They notice when someone's body language shifts. Other people often find this exhausting to be around, though the Alad is not usually doing it intentionally. It is what the design does at rest. Some Alads never learn to fully turn it off. Others learn, over time, to relax it when they are in genuinely safe environments. But the underlying capacity is always there, ready to activate at the first hint of danger. The Alad has a specific relationship to violence. They are capable of it. They can use it effectively. But they are, on the whole, not eager to use it. This is a distinction that is often missed by people who do not know Alads well. The stereotype of the guardian is that they are itching for a fight. This is wrong. The trained Alad is not itching for a fight. The trained Alad is hoping the fight does not happen. But if it happens, they are ready. And if it happens, they act with a decisiveness that other types cannot match. The Alad does not waste time in a fight. They do what needs to be done to end the threat, and then they stop. The Alad is not sadistic. They are not vengeful. They are functional. The Alad is often uncomfortable in casual social settings. Parties, gatherings, purely social events without a clear purpose tend to make the Alad restless. There is nothing for them to do. Their design is not activated. Some Alads solve this by taking on a functional role at social gatherings. Bartender, coordinator, person who watches the door, person who handles the trouble when trouble shows up. If you have ever noticed that one guy at every party who is not really enjoying himself but is somehow essential to the party running smoothly, that guy is probably an Alad. The Alad has a specific relationship to authority. They follow it when the authority is legitimate, but they have a keen internal sense of when authority is legitimate and when it is not. The Alad, who is asked to defend a legitimate cause, will do so with everything they have. The Alad, who is asked to defend an illegitimate cause, will hesitate, will look for reasons to withdraw, and, if pushed, will refuse. This has caused significant problems for corrupt leaders throughout history. They cannot count on their Alads to obey unlawful orders. The Alads may not have the language to explain why they will not obey, but they will not. The Alad often has a personal code, not necessarily articulated, not necessarily even conscious, but present, rules they live by, things they will and will not do. When you press an Alad on why they have the rules they have, they often cannot explain. They just know. This is the design speaking. The internal moral apparatus of the Alad is finely tuned, and it operates below the level of verbal reasoning, but it operates consistently. The Alad, who violates their own code, experiences a specific kind of distress that other types do not experience in the same way. They lose their center. They become disoriented. Some of them, if the violation is severe, never recover. The Alad often has an intense capacity for love, but they love in specific ways. Alad love is protective. If an Alad loves you, they are going to defend you. They are going to notice threats to you that you did not notice. They are going to intervene in situations that you thought you were handling. This can be overwhelming for the beloved, especially if the beloved is not used to that kind of intensity. The Alad who loves does not love casually. They love in a way that includes their entire design, which means their love is protective, watchful, and permanent. The Alad has a difficult relationship with the modern world in specific ways. The design of the Alad is not well accommodated in most modern professional environments. The Alad in an office job is often deeply miserable. There is nothing to guard. There is no clear threat to respond to. The energy that the design generates has nowhere to go. Many Alads in this situation become depressed, or angry, or physically unwell. Some manage by putting the energy into extreme physical activity outside of work. Others manage by finding careers that use the design directly: military, law enforcement, security, emergency services, bodyguard work, bouncer work, firefighting. All of these are Alad-friendly careers, and they are dominated, statistically, by Alads. But there is another category of Alad that is less often noticed: the Alad who becomes a defender of something abstract, a defender of an idea, a defender of a tradition, a defender of a community. These Alads do not necessarily use physical violence, though many of them could. They use their guarding capacity in other ways. They speak up when others stay silent. They defend the unpopular position when it is the correct position. They stand between vulnerable people and the forces that would harm them, even when the forces are political or social rather than physical. This is a fully legitimate Alad function, and in the current age, when a lot of the threats to human life and dignity are not primarily physical, the Alad who has developed this capacity is doing enormously important work. The Alad and the Shar. This relationship deserves special attention, because when it works, it is one of the most productive partnerships in human civilization, and when it does not work, it is one of the most destructive. The functioning Shar-Alad partnership produces stable rule. The Shar makes the decisions. The Alad protects the Shar from the enemies that decision-making inevitably creates. The Shar can operate at a strategic level because they do not have to constantly monitor for personal threat. The Alad can operate at a protective level because they have a clear mission and clear boundaries. Both types get to do what they were designed to do, and the civilization benefits. The dysfunctional version is what happens when the Shar loses trust in the Alad, or the Alad loses trust in the Shar. When the Shar starts treating the Alad as expendable, the Alad becomes bitter and eventually withdraws their protection. When the Alad starts to believe the Shar is unworthy, the Alad either departs or, in extreme cases, becomes the leader of the rebellion against the Shar. Palace coups throughout history have often been Alad-led. The guardian, having decided that the person they were guarding is not worth guarding, becomes the executioner. If you are an Alad, the age that is coming will be complicated for you. On the one hand, there is going to be significant physical and social instability, and your gifts are going to be in demand. On the other hand, the traditional institutions that channel Alad energy, the militaries and police forces of the nation-states, are themselves going to be under stress and possibly restructuring. You may find yourself, over the course of your life, moving between traditional guardian roles and new ones that do not yet have names. The design will still be doing what the design does. The question is what you find to guard, and how you guard it. How do you know if you are an Alad? Ask yourself these questions. From childhood, have you naturally taken on the protector role in your family, your friend group, your neighborhood? Do you notice threats that other people do not seem to notice? Are you physically strong beyond what your build would suggest? Do you have an inner code, a set of rules about what you will and will not do, that you did not derive from any external teaching but that has been with you as long as you can remember? Do you feel restless in situations without a clear purpose? And settled in situations with a clear mission? When you love someone, do you become protective of them in a way that is instinctive and sometimes overwhelming to them? Have you had experiences where you knew something bad was about to happen and reacted before it happened and been proven right? Are you often the person that other people turn to when they feel afraid? Do you have, or do you find yourself drawn to martial arts, weapons training, or other forms of physical preparation, even in peaceful times? If most of those are you are an Alad. And you should know a few things. You should know that your design is honorable. There is nothing wrong with being built to guard. There is nothing wrong with being physically strong and protective. Modern culture, in some ways, has become suspicious of these traits and has tried to convince Alads that they are somehow primitive or aggressive or problematic. The Sumerians would have found this absurd. The guardian is one of the most necessary types in any human society. Without guardians, the vulnerable are prey. Without you, the people you love are unprotected. You are needed. Do not let anyone talk you out of it. You should know that your loyalty is precious and should be given carefully. The Alad who gives their loyalty to something unworthy pays a terrible price. Take your time. Study what and who you are considering committing to. When you commit fully. But do not commit lightly, because you do not have the option of half commitment. Your design does not work that way. You should know that the coming age is going to test your capacity for discernment. There are going to be many things asking for your loyalty. Not all of them will deserve it. Your work, in the years ahead, will be to figure out which of them do. This is not a simple task, but it is your task. And how well you do it will determine both what you personally become and what you contribute to whatever emerges from the transition. That is Type 7, the Alad, the Guardian, the one whose fierceness is a gift and whose loyalty is a sacrament. Now let us go to Type 8. And here we start to move into territory that is much stranger, because the last two types were not designed by any of the Anunnaki. They emerged, and what they carry is not part of the original blueprint. It is something else. Let me try to describe what it is. Type 8, the Atemu. And here we cross into the territory that the Sumerians treated with the greatest caution, because the Atemu is not a design type in the sense that the first 7 are design types. The Atemu emerged, and what emerged, according to the tablets, has been living quietly among the other 7 types for a very long time, and doing something that the tablets describe but do not fully explain. The word Atemu, in Sumerian and later Akkadian, is one of the most difficult words in the ancient religious vocabulary to translate. It is usually rendered as spirit, or ghost, or ancestral shade, but those translations are too weak. The Atemu is not just a ghost. The Atemu is the aspect of a dead person that remains active in the world, that can influence events, that can enter the bodies of the living, and that can, over generations, become intertwined with a specific bloodline in ways that the tablets say are not fully reversible. The Atemu, as a human type, is a person in whom this intertwining has become dominant, meaning that in this person, an ancestral presence is not just influencing them occasionally, it is co-inhabiting them. Not in the sense of possession, in the modern horror movie sense. In a much subtler sense, the Atemu person carries the active memory, the active personality, the active intelligence of one or more of their ancestors, and this presence is a permanent feature of who they are. It is not something that comes and goes. It is who they are. I know how this sounds. I want you to hold it carefully. The tablets are not describing something supernatural in the fantasy sense. They are describing something that they treated as a natural phenomenon, a specific outcome of specific processes, and something that has always been present in every human population, but has often been misidentified or explained in other ways. In modern cultures, the Atemu is often understood through frameworks like generational trauma, ancestral inheritance, family curses, or in more clinical language, deep, unconscious identification with family members long dead. What the Sumerians thought was going on was more specific than any of those. They thought that the Atemu was carrying an actual presence, and that the presence had its own agenda, its own knowledge, and its own capacity to act through the living body it inhabited. The Atemu is uncommon but not extraordinarily rare, roughly 2% of the population, according to the tablets, though this is heavily concentrated in certain lineages and specific geographic regions. Anywhere there has been a lineage that stayed in one place for a very long time and had significant unresolved events across generations, the Atemu tends to be more common. This is why certain families, certain villages, certain regions have folk traditions about ancestral presence that are much stronger than in other places. Those traditions are not superstition. They are reflections of the fact that in those places, the Atemu type has been more visible over the centuries, and the local culture has developed language for it. The physical signs of the Atemu are subtle. They do not always show. but there are patterns. The Atemu often has a face that looks like an older face than their age should produce. Not aged in the sense of wrinkled, aged in the sense of carrying something that a young face does not usually carry. Children who are Atemu are often described by adults as being old souls. They look at you with a directness and a depth that seems to belong to someone 20 or 40 years older than they are. Adults who are Atemu often carry this quality throughout life. They do not look wise in a performed way. They look as if they have been through something, which, in a sense, they have. What they have been through is what the ancestor lived, and the ancestor's experiences are riding in the current body. The eyes of the Atemu are often deep in a specific way. Not the seeing depth of the Adapa, not the watching depth of the Alad, a more inward depth, as if there are chambers behind the eyes, and the person is looking out from somewhere further back than the eye sockets. This is difficult to describe unless you have seen it. But if you have known someone who has this quality, you will recognize what I am pointing at. Their eyes seem to belong to more than one person. The body of the Atemu often carries signs of the ancestor. This is one of the strangest phenomena the tablets describe. An Atemu may have a physical characteristic that does not run in their immediate family but did run in a specific ancestor several generations back. A mole in an unusual place, a specific gait, a tendency toward a specific illness, a birthmark in a specific shape. The Sumerian tradition tracked these markers carefully and considered them evidence of which ancestor was riding in which descendant. Modern genetics has explained some of these phenomena in terms of recessive traits and skipped generations. Other cases are harder to explain by that mechanism, though the mainstream science does not usually engage with them. Now the behavioral signs. And this is where the Atemu becomes really distinctive. The Atemu is often precocious. They know things they should not know. They speak with a maturity that is unusual for their age. They have opinions that seem to come from experience they have not personally had. As children, they are often the ones who ask the adults difficult questions, the ones that surprise the adults, the ones that reveal a level of thought that the child has not lived long enough to have developed on their own. Some Atemu grow out of this. Many do not. They remain, throughout their lives, people who seem to know more than they should. The Atemu often has, from childhood, memories that do not fit their life. Not necessarily what modern culture calls past life memories, though some Atemu report exactly that. More often, a diffuse sense of remembering things that happened before they were born. Landscapes they have never visited but recognize. Foods they have never eaten but crave. Skills they have not learned but seem to pick up unusually quickly, as if they are remembering rather than acquiring. Languages they respond to before they have studied them. This pattern is consistent enough across Atemu populations that the tablets treat it as a defining feature of the type. The Atemu has a specific kind of intelligence. Not necessarily higher than other types, but older. The Atemu often approaches problems with what looks like the wisdom of accumulated experience, even when they are young and have not personally accumulated much. Their solutions are often good. Their instincts are often correct. Their judgments are often, in the long run, vindicated. This is why, in many traditional cultures, the Atemu was consulted on important matters. They were understood to have access to more than one lifetime of perspective. The Atemu often has an intense connection to specific places, especially places that have significance to the ancestor whose presence they carry. They visit a certain city and feel that they belong there, even if they have no personal history there. They see a certain landscape and know, without being told, what happened in it. They walk into a certain building and know its layout before they have explored it. These experiences are common enough among Atemu that most of them, if you talk to them at length, will have several such stories. The Atemu has a difficult relationship with their own identity, because if part of who they are is an ancestor, and the ancestor has their own preferences, their own memories, their own inclinations, then who exactly is the person? The Atemu is often, throughout life, working out the boundary between their own personality and the personality of the presence they carry. Some Atemu find this integration easy. They accept the presence and let it inform them without letting it overwhelm them. Others find it torturous. They feel that they cannot be themselves because someone else is always there. Others do not know what is happening at all, and simply experience themselves as strange, as multiple, as never quite settling into a single stable sense of who they are. The Atemu often has a difficult relationship with romantic partnership, because the partner ends up being in a relationship with more than one person, the living Atemu and whoever is inside them. Some partners cannot handle this. They feel they are being watched by someone they did not sign up to be watched by. They feel they are being compared to someone they never met. They feel that the Atemu is not fully present with them. because part of the Atemu is always somewhere else. The relationships that last are usually the ones where the partner comes to understand and accept the Atemu situation, and finds a way to be at peace with the presence that shares the household. The Atemu often has unusual dreams. Dreams of places they have not been. Dreams in languages they do not speak. Dreams in which they are someone else, doing something else, in a time that is not their time. These dreams are often vivid, coherent, and continue over long periods. Some Atemu learn to work with these dreams. They pay attention to them. They record them. They use them as sources of information. Others try to suppress them, and the suppression rarely succeeds. The Atemu has a particular relationship to death. Death, for the Atemu, is not the final barrier that it is for other types. The Atemu knows, in some deep way, that they may not have language for. That consciousness continues. They know it because they are already carrying evidence of it, in the form of the ancestral presence within them. This gives the Atemu a kind of calm about mortality that other types often find disturbing. It also gives them, sometimes, an inclination toward morbid subject matter. Not out of unhealthy fixation, out of familiarity. Death is not foreign to them. It has been in the house their whole life. The Atemu can be, and often is, a source of enormous healing for the families they are born into, because the Atemu can bring forward, into the present, the unresolved material of past generations, and process it in a way that the ancestor was not able to process it. The Atemu becomes the healer of the bloodline. This is a large task. Some Atemu take it on consciously. Others do it without knowing they are doing it. But those families who have an Atemu in the current generation often find that patterns that ran for centuries suddenly begin to shift. Illnesses that afflicted every generation stop. Emotional wounds that were passed down cease to be passed down. The Atemu carries the load, and in carrying it, disperses it. But this is not always what happens. Sometimes the Atemu is broken by what they are carrying. Sometimes the ancestral presence is too heavy, too damaged, too tangled with unresolved suffering for the Atemu to metabolize it. In those cases, the Atemu themselves become a case of what modern psychology calls complex trauma. They cannot function normally. They cannot form stable relationships. They cannot make sense of their own inner life. They are drowning in someone else's experience, and they do not know how to get to shore. The Sumerian tradition had specific practices for helping the Atemu manage what they carry. Rituals for the ancestor, prayers, sacrifices, symbolic and literal, times of dedicated attention to the presence, times of dedicated separation from it, when the Atemu would go alone to a specific place and be, for a time, only themselves. Most modern Atemu have none of these tools. They are winging it. Some of them wing it beautifully. Others do not. The Atemu and the current age. In the current age, the Atemu has been largely invisible. Modern secular culture does not have the framework to recognize them. When they show symptoms, the symptoms are treated as mental illness. When they show gifts, the gifts are attributed to talent or education. When they express the strange knowing that comes from the presence, they are often mocked or told to be more scientific. The result is that most modern Atemu do not know what they are, and are not receiving any of the support that traditional cultures gave to their type. In the age that is coming, according to the tablets, the Atemu is going to become more visible, because as the material world becomes less stable, the relationship between the living and the dead is going to matter more. Traditional cultures have always known this. Modern culture has forgotten. The transition, whatever it turns out to be, will restore this knowledge. And the Atemu, who have been carrying the knowledge in their own bodies all along, will suddenly become recognized as what they are, which will be, for many of them, a profound relief. And for some of them, a call to work they have not yet fully understood was theirs. If you are an Atemu, some of this is landing hard. If you know what I'm talking about, you know it. You have felt the presence. You have known things you should not know. You have carried something in yourself that was not fully you, and that was not fully someone else, and that has confused you your entire life. How do you know? Ask yourself these questions. Have you had, from childhood, a sense of being older than your age? Have you had memories, dreams, or intuitions that seem to belong to someone else? Do you feel a strong pull to a specific ancestor, or a specific ancestral place that you cannot fully explain? Have you known things about your family that you were not told, and been proven right? Have you felt, at times, that you are more than one person, or that someone is with you when you are alone? Have you had a lifelong interest in death, dying, ancestors, or the passage of consciousness beyond the body that does not feel morbid but feels natural? Are you sensitive to graveyards, to old family homes, to sites where significant historical events happened? Do you dream of places you have not been, in language you do not speak, in bodies that are not yours? Have you had experiences that other people in modern culture would call impossible, but that you know were real? If most of those are you are Netemu. And you are not crazy. You are a specific type, in a specific tradition, and there is a very old framework for who you are, even if no one alive in your immediate world can name it for you. You should know that what you carry is a gift and a responsibility. The gift is the depth, the responsibility is the ancestor. If the presence in you is unhealed, part of your work in this life is to heal it, to let it complete something it did not complete, to allow it to rest. Different traditions have different methods for this. The methods are less important than the willingness. When you turn toward the presence, honor it, and offer it what it needs. Most Atemu report a significant lightening of the burden. When you refuse to acknowledge it, or try to force it out, the burden usually intensifies. That is type 8. The Atemu, the one who carries the past into the present, the one whose life includes more than one life. Now let us go to the 9th and final type. And this is where the tablets themselves become uncertain, where the language becomes fragmented, where scholars still disagree about what the text is even trying to say. The 9th type is the strangest of all of them, and by the time we are done describing them, you are going to understand why the Sumerians treated them the way they did, which was, to be frank, with a mixture of awe and fear that did not quite belong to any category the other 8 types produce. Type 9, the Zakik, the Void Walker, the one the Sumerians did not fully understand, did not fully welcome, and did not fully know what to do with. The word Zakik is difficult even in Sumerian. It is derived from a root that means the wind, or the breath, or the spirit that is not attached to a body. When the Sumerian priests used the word in ritual context, they used it to refer to a class of beings that existed outside of the ordinary cosmic order. Not gods, not humans, not the animating spirits of dead humans. Something else. Something that came from what the tablets call the outside, and that occasionally entered the ordered world through specific individuals, and that was neither friendly nor hostile in any way the tablets could pin down. It simply was. It simply moved through. And when it moved through a person, that person became different. The Zakik, as a human type, is a person in whom the outside has taken up residence, not in the sense of possession, in the sense of shared occupancy that is much older and much more permanent than possession. The Zakik was born already carrying the outside. They did not acquire it in a specific event. They came into life with it. And the outside, whatever it is, uses the Zakik as a channel for its own purposes, which the tablets do not fully name because the Sumerian priests admitted they did not understand what those purposes were. Let me be careful here, because when I say the outside, I do not mean anything simple like demons, or aliens, or spirits, or any of the categories that modern popular culture would try to fit this into. The Sumerian priests were dealing with something older than any of those categories. The outside, in the technical Sumerian usage, is what is beyond the cosmos that the Anunnaki organized. It predates them. It is not part of the story of creation. It was there before creation happened, and it is still there, existing in whatever mode it exists in, alongside the created order. Occasionally, for reasons the tablets do not explain, it reaches into the ordered world through specific individuals. Those individuals are the Zakik. The Zakik is by far the rarest of the 9 types. The tablets estimate perhaps 1 in 10,000 people. In some readings, 1 in 100,000. In a large city, you might have a few. In a country, you might have a few thousand. Across the whole earth, at any given time, perhaps 100,000 living Zakik, most of them not knowing what they are. Most of them being treated by their societies as either broken or dangerous, or in the very rare cases where someone recognizes them as prophets or witches or shamans of a very particular kind. Because the Zakik is not just gifted, the Zakik is disturbing. Even to the people who love them, even to themselves, the Zakik carries a quality that is not fully human in the ordinary sense. Not inhuman, not anti-human. Just, in ways that are difficult to describe, adjacent to the human in a way that other humans are not. The physical signs of the Zakik are inconsistent. That is one of the strangest features of the type. Unlike the other 8, whose physical characteristics tend to cluster, the Zakik does not have a stable physical profile. Some are tall, some are short, some are physically strong, some are physically weak, some are conventionally beautiful, some are ordinary. The body seems to be, for the Zakik, less determinative than for other types. The presence of the outside overrides the ordinary physical patterning. But there are some markers that appear often enough to be worth noting. The Zakik often has eyes that other people describe as unusual, not in a specific direction, just unusual. The eyes are hard to remember exactly. Different people describe them differently. When you meet a Zakik, and later try to describe them, you often find that you cannot describe their face precisely. Something in it does not sit still. This is a documented phenomenon, and the tablets note it. The Zakik face is what they called the veiled face, though they used the same term for the Adapa and meant something slightly different. In the Adapa, the veil is a quality of depth. In the Zakik, the veil is a quality of shift. The face does not stay stable in the observer's memory. The voice of the Zakik is often unusual, sometimes very deep, sometimes very high, sometimes changing over the course of a conversation, not in the way that voices ordinarily change with emotion, but in a way that suggests different tonal registers are being accessed for different purposes. Many Zakik are gifted with music, or with poetry, or with any form of expression that uses voice as an instrument. Some cannot speak comfortably in ordinary conversation but can sing without difficulty. The body of the Zakik often has, from birth, minor anomalies, an asymmetry in the face, a birthmark in an unusual location, a slight difference in the length of the arms or legs, a distinctive scar or feature that does not fit the family pattern. These are not always dramatic, but they are present. The tablets say that the outside marks the body of the Zakik in some visible way, so that those with the training to see it can identify one. Most of us do not have the training, so the marks are usually noticed but not connected to anything. Now, the behavioral signs. And this is where the Zakik becomes unmistakable once you know what to look for. The Zakik is often, from earliest childhood, aware of things that other people are not aware of. This is different from the Adapa's boundary walking, and different from the Etemu's ancestral presence. The Zakik perceives things that are not present in the ordinary shared world at all. They see figures that are not visible to others. They hear sounds that others do not hear. They know things that could not be known by any ordinary means. And these experiences are constant, not occasional, constant. The Zakik is living, from birth, in a wider reality than the one the other types inhabit. Many Zakik do not know this is unusual. They assume everyone experiences what they experience. It is only when they get old enough to talk about it, and are met with confusion or fear or ridicule, that they realize their perception is different. Some Zakik learn to hide it early. They stop talking about what they see. They pretend to be normal. This works, more or less, until adolescence, when the intensity of the experiences often surges, and hiding becomes very difficult. The Zakik often has, throughout life, encounters with the outside that other people do not have. Not visions in the ordinary sense. Encounters, meetings, conversations, of a kind, with things that are not in the ordinary world. The Zakik, if they trust you enough to describe these encounters, describe them in vivid detail, and the details tend to be consistent across different Zakik who have never met each other, which is one of the pieces of evidence the tablets rely on for the reality of the outside. Different Zakik, in different eras, in different cultures, report the same figures, the same landscapes, the same words. The Sumerian priests cataloged these reports carefully, and they compared them to reports from Zakik in earlier centuries and found that the same figures recurred across time, spoken about by people who could not possibly have communicated with each other. The Zakik has a specific relationship to language. Many of them do not speak until later than average. Some do not speak much at all, throughout life. Others speak strangely. They use unusual constructions. They coin words that turn out to be useful. They shift the meaning of ordinary words in ways that other people find either brilliant or incomprehensible. The Zakik, more than any other type, is a source of new ideas. Not the ideas of the Umanu, who transmits what has already been learned. Not the ideas of the Igigi descendant, who searches for what might be. The Zakik brings in, from the outside, ideas that were not there before, concepts that did not exist, ways of seeing that had no precedent. When you look at the history of human innovation, at the moments when something genuinely new entered the culture, you can often trace it back to a Zakik. The Zakik has a difficult relationship with ordinary social life, not because they cannot be social. Some are quite charming, but because ordinary social life is based on shared assumptions about what is real. And the Zakik does not fully share those assumptions. They know, from direct experience, that reality is much larger than what most people are willing to acknowledge. So they are, in ordinary conversation, always translating, always leaving things out, always playing along with premises they know are inadequate. This gets exhausting. Many Zakik withdraw. They become solitary. They spend their time in places, physical or mental, where they do not have to translate. The Zakik is often, in modern culture, misdiagnosed with mental illness. And the misdiagnosis is understandable. Some of what the Zakik experiences overlaps with what would be considered psychotic symptoms in another type. Hearing voices, seeing things others do not see, believing things that seem impossible. In another type, these experiences would be a sign of illness. In the Zakik, they are the ordinary condition of the type. The problem is that modern psychiatry does not have a way to distinguish a functioning Zakik from a person in psychiatric crisis. The two are often treated the same. The Zakik is medicated to suppress the perceptions. The perceptions become dulled, but not eliminated. The Zakik becomes a shadow of what they were designed to be, unable to function fully and also unable to access what makes them useful. This is a tragedy that has repeated itself in millions of cases over the last century. The Sumerian tradition dealt with the Zakik differently. In the ancient world, when a Zakik was identified, they were taken to a specific temple. Different traditions had different practices, but there was always a place where the Zakik could be, where their perceptions were treated as real information, where their strangeness was welcomed as a source of insight, and where they were given roles that used what they carried rather than suppressing it. Some Zakik became oracles, some became advisors to kings, some became artists whose work was collected and preserved. Some became solitary contemplatives who lived in caves or in small dwellings on temple grounds, receiving visitors who came to consult them. In every case, the Zakik was given a functional place in the society, and their capacities were used. Modern culture has almost no equivalent of these traditional roles. There are a few. Certain kinds of artist, certain kinds of visionary entrepreneur, certain kinds of religious mystic, though most religious institutions today would be uncomfortable with a genuine Zakik on their premises. But most Zakik today have no framework for what they are, no institutions that will accommodate them, and no community that will recognize them. They are alone, in a way that is deeper than the loneliness of the other types, because they are alone with the whole outside and no one to share it with. The Zakik often has, throughout life, a sense of mission. Not always articulate, but present. A sense that they are here for a reason, that they have something to do, that the outside is not just visiting them but is asking them to do something specific with what they perceive. Some Zakik figure out what this mission is and pursue it. Others never figure it out and spend their whole lives searching for it. The tablets say that the Zakik who fulfills their mission dies satisfied, in a way that other types rarely experience. The Zakik who does not fulfill their mission dies with a specific kind of anguish, that they were carrying something they never delivered. The Zakik is often deeply alone in love. The ordinary forms of partnership do not work well for them. Their partners often do not understand what they are living with. Even affectionate, patient, well-meaning partners cannot enter the outside with them and cannot receive fully what the Zakik is trying to communicate. Some Zakik solve this by not partnering. Others partner with someone who accepts the situation without needing to fully understand it. A few, very rarely, partner with another Zakik, and those pairings, when they work, are among the most extraordinary human unions ever recorded. But they are also volatile. Two Zakik together sometimes ignite each other and sometimes destroy each other, and there is no easy way to predict which. The Zakik has a specific relationship to death, and it is not what you might expect. The Zakik does not fear death, but the Zakik is often the type that seems reluctant to die when the time comes. Because the Zakik, uniquely among the types, has been in some kind of continuous conversation with the outside their whole life, and death is not the departure into unknown territory that it is for other types. For the Zakik, death is the closing of the channel through which they have been receiving. What happens to the outside's connection to the ordinary world? When the Zakik dies, the tablets do not fully explain. There is a suggestion in one fragment that the outside does not lose access when a Zakik dies, that it simply reroutes through another Zakik. But that fragment is broken in a critical place, and the meaning is not fully clear. The Zakik and the current age. The current age has not been kind to the Zakik. Modern secular culture, built on the denial of any reality beyond the material, has systematically pathologized the Zakik's ordinary condition. Millions of them have been medicated, institutionalized, or driven to suicide by an environment that could not tolerate what they carried. The loss to human civilization has been incalculable, because the Zakik is, according to the tablets, one of the types most essential for the transition between ages. The Zakik is the one who can perceive, directly, what the transition actually is. The other types will experience the transition through their own particular lenses. The Zakik will experience it as itself, from the outside, in the terms the outside uses. In the coming age, the Zakik is going to become more visible, and, one hopes, more welcomed. The framework of pure materialism that has excluded them is already breaking down. There are more openings in the current culture for the kind of experience the Zakik carries than there have been in centuries. This does not mean the Zakik will have an easy time. They will still be strange. They will still be difficult to be around for long stretches. They will still not fit neatly into ordinary social structures. But there is beginning to be a recognition that some people are living in a wider reality than others, and that those people have something to contribute that the ordinary reality does not contain. If you are a Zakik, you probably knew you were one before I finished describing them. Because the Zakik, more than any other type, knows what they are, even without a name for it. You have felt the outside your whole life. You have known that other people were not experiencing what you were experiencing. You have felt, at moments, that you were bringing something in. And you have felt, at other moments, that you were being asked to do something you did not know how to do. There is not much I can tell you that you do not already know at some level. But I can tell you a few things that the tablets specifically say about your type. You should know that what you carry is real. It is not madness. It is not delusion. It is not a chemical imbalance. It is a specific condition of being that has been recognized in every traditional culture and that has a specific place in the design of human existence, even though the current culture does not recognize it. You should know that you are not alone, even though it feels that way. There are others, not many, but others. And when you meet one, you will know it, without either of you having to explain. Look for them. They are looking for you. You should know that your mission is real. Whatever the sense of purpose is that has been humming under your life, it is not a fantasy. There is something you are here to do. It may not be big in any conventional sense. The mission of a Zakik is not usually visible in the ordinary metrics of achievement, but it is real. And part of your work in this life is to find out what it is, and to do it as fully as you can. You should know that the age is turning. The environment that has hated you is passing. What is coming is not going to be easy, for anyone, but it is going to have more room for you than the last one did. And what you have been carrying and preparing and quietly holding is going to be needed. That is what the tablets say, in the last surviving lines of the fragment that describes your type. The Zakik is the ninth, the last of the types the Sumerians cataloged. The one who stands with one foot in the ordinary world and one foot in what is beyond the ordinary world. The one who cannot be fully explained by the categories the other 8 types use to understand themselves. The one who was not designed by any of the Anunnaki, but who emerged, and who has been present in every generation, quietly, since human beings have been human beings. That is all 9. Those are the types. Now let us step back and look at the whole picture, and understand what it means that these 9 designs are all walking around at the same time, in the same world, in the current moment. Here is what I want you to hold in your mind. Right now, at this moment, in the city or town where you are living, there are all 9 of these types walking around. The Lulu is the majority, of course, but somewhere on your street there is an Igigi descendant, restless, searching, looking up at the sky at night and not knowing what they are looking for. There is an Adapa, quiet, deep-eyed, sensitive, being asked to live like a Lulu and slowly dying inside. There is an En priest, exhausted from serving people who do not know what they are receiving. There is a Shar, in a position of authority somewhere, making decisions that affect everyone else. There is an Umanu, in a small, quiet office or a home library, keeping records that most people will never see. There is an Alad, watching the door of some place, guarding something. There is an Itemu, carrying an ancestor whose name they may not even know. And somewhere, 1 in 10,000, there is a Zakik, walking through the ordinary world with the outside quietly speaking to them, and nobody around them realizes what is happening in that person's inner life. All 9, in the same city, at the same time, interacting with each other constantly, most of them not knowing what the other is. All of them making assumptions about each other that are based on the false premise that everyone is basically the same underneath. The Lulu treats the Adapa as an odd Lulu, and the Adapa is exhausted trying to be an odd Lulu when they are not a Lulu at all. The Shar treats the En priest as a subordinate to be managed, and the En priest chokes down the impulse to say the truth about what they are seeing. The Umanu writes accurate records that the Shar overrides. The Alad guards the Shar without knowing that the Shar has become unworthy of guarding. And so on. Every day, in every workplace, in every family, in every community. The 9 types are running past each other, colliding with each other, marrying each other, raising children together, and mostly not knowing what any of it means. The mixing of the types across generations is where it gets even more complex. Because most people alive today are not pure examples of any one type. They are dominant in one type but carry traces of others, sometimes several others, sometimes many others. This is what the tablets call the blending. And the blending explains why most people, when they read a list, like the one I have just given you, feel that they might be several different types at once. That is not confusion. That is accurate. You are dominant in one, but you carry traces of others. The traces add flavor. They add complication. They add subtlety. But the dominant type is the dominant type, and it is the frequency your consciousness is actually tuned to, no matter what traces are riding along. How do you tell which is dominant when you feel like you are several? Here is the test the tablets give, under stress, in real difficulty, when your ordinary strategies stop working, when you are pushed past your normal range. What comes out then? That is your dominant type, because the traces cannot hold up under stress. They fall away. What remains, standing there, doing whatever it does, is the actual design. The Lulu under stress becomes practical, grounds themselves in the immediate physical situation, and works the problem. The Igigi descendant under stress wants to leave, wants to search for a way out that no one else has thought of. The Adapa under stress goes quiet, goes inward, listens for what is beneath the surface. The N priest under stress tries to hold the group together, tries to comfort even themselves in the middle of chaos. The Shar under stress takes command. The Umanu under stress writes it down, tries to make sense of it in words. The Alad under stress moves toward the source of the danger. The Atemu under stress feels the ancestor rise up in them, feels the presence assert itself, sometimes speaking through them in ways that surprise the people around them. The Zakik under stress often becomes strangely calm, as if the ordinary emergency is not the real emergency, as if they are seeing the whole situation from a distance that the others cannot see it from. Watch yourself under stress. That is your type. And once you know it, everything else about your life starts to make sense in a way it did not make sense before. The people who confused you begin to make sense too. Mismatches that hurt you now begin to have names, and those names bring power. Now let me talk about what is coming, because you deserve to hear it plainly. The tablets are explicit that we are at the end of an age. The age of the Shar, the 5,000-year run of hierarchical rule, imperial civilization, top-down organization, and the specific patterns that go with all of that. That age is closing. The signs of it closing are everywhere, if you are willing to look. Political legitimacy is collapsing worldwide. The old institutions do not command the trust they once commanded. The economic systems built for the last age are creaking under demands they were not designed to meet. The natural environment, which the last age treated as an infinite resource, is showing the limits it was hiding under. Technology is moving faster than the ruling class can adapt. Communication has escaped the containers that were built to hold it. The people, who for 5,000 years have been governed by the Shar, are starting to feel that the Shar is not entirely in control of what is happening, and they are not. What comes next? The tablets do not fully name. Different fragments give different answers. Some fragments suggest that the next age will be dominated by the N priest, and that we are entering an era in which spiritual authority, the direct connection to what is above, will become the primary organizing principle of civilization. Other fragments suggest that it will be the Adapa, and that we are entering an era in which the boundary walkers become the most important figures, translating between the ordinary world and whatever is coming through the transition. Still, others suggest that the coming age will be shared by multiple types, and that the pattern of one dominant type ruling the culture will itself be broken. There is one fragment, at the end of one of the most damaged tablets, that suggests the age after this one will be dominated by the Zakik, which is a startling suggestion because the Zakik is the rarest type. If they become dominant in cultural terms, it means the culture itself is going to undergo a change that the tablets describe only as the opening. Whatever the opening is, the tablets say it changes what a human being is capable of, and it does not close after it happens. There is also the question of the resets. The tablets are clear that between ages, there is a transition, and the transition is not always peaceful. 6 resets have already occurred, according to the historical fragments. Each reset wiped a specific type from the earth. The 7th is coming. The 8th, which is inferred from the mathematical structure but not directly named, is described as the one that ends the current cycle entirely. Some readers of the tablets take this literally, meaning the eighth will end humanity as we know it. Others take it more symbolically, meaning the eighth will end the current form of humanity and produce something new. Either way, the picture is one of significant change, not gradual evolution. What determines which type survives a reset? The tablets are specific about this, and it is worth attending to. The type that survives is not the strongest, not the most numerous, not the most technologically advanced. The type that survives is the one that is most aligned with the frequency of the incoming age. Every reset is, in some sense, a tuning. The universe shifts its dominant frequency, and the humans who are tuned to something close to the new frequency come through. The humans who are tuned to the frequency of the departing age do not come through. This is not a moral judgment. It is a physical description, in the Sumerian understanding of physics. Frequencies match, or they do not. When they match, life continues. When they do not, life ends. This is why knowing your type matters. In the context of what is coming, because your type is your frequency. And your frequency will either be close to the incoming frequency or far from it. The tablets do not tell you which type is closest to the incoming frequency for the 7th reset, because different fragments give different answers. But they do tell you that being aligned with your actual type, being fully yourself in the design you were born with, is your best chance of being close enough to whatever is coming. The person who is trying to be a different type, who is denying their design, who is stuck in the frequency of a type they are not, has less chance of making the tuning. The person who is being their own type fully has more chance. This is one of the most practical implications of the whole framework. If you have been living a life that does not fit your type, this is the moment to correct that. Not for some abstract reason, for a very concrete reason. The age is changing. Whatever is coming is going to be selective. And your best preparation is to be who you actually are, as fully as you can be, in the time you have left before the transition completes. Let me be specific about what that looks like for each type. If you are a Lulu, and you have been trying to be an intellectual, or an artist, or a mystic, or anything else that is not what you were designed for, stop. Come back to the ground. Get your hands into physical work. Get your body into physical activity. Reconnect with your family, your community, the people and places that are actually yours. The Lulu will do well in the transition to the extent that the Lulu is fully Lulu, not a diminished version of some higher type, a full expression of the base template that Enki designed and that the earth accepts most completely. If you are an Igigi descendant, and you have been trying to settle down in a place that does not fit you, or a job that does not fit you, or a life that does not fit you, this is your moment to move. Not everyone, not always. But if the sense of wrongness has been chronic, listen to it. Go out. Find what fits. The Igigi descendant was designed to search, and the searching is the work, and the searching is what you need to be doing. If you are an Adapa, stop trying to live like a Lulu. Stop working the corporate job. Stop attending the crowded social events. Stop pretending that you are not sensitive. Your sensitivity is your instrument. Your sensitivity is what you were given. Build a life around it. Reduce the noise. Find the small number of relationships that actually fit. Do the work that only you can do, whatever that turns out to be. The Adapa in the coming age is essential, and the Adapa who has not developed themselves fully will not be able to serve when the moment comes. If you are an end priest, find a way to channel the service that does not exhaust you into collapse. This may mean fewer people, deeper relationships. This may mean a specific practice of contact with what is above, done every day, without fail. This may mean saying no to demands that the old you would have said yes to. Your work in the coming age is significant. You cannot do it if you are burned out. So build the structure that keeps you connected and let some things go that you have been carrying too long. If you are a Shar, look hard at what you are ruling and why. If you are ruling something worth ruling, keep going, but adapt to the new environment. The old command structures are becoming obsolete. Learn the new ones. If you are ruling something that has become empty, that no longer serves anyone, including yourself, be willing to step down. The Shar, who cannot step down when the throne no longer holds anything, is the tragic Shar of history. Do not be that one. The transition will make room for Shars who can lead in new ways, and it will not make room for Shars who cannot let go. If you are an Umanu, preserve. That is your one job. What you preserve now, what you record now, what you collect and organize now, is going to matter enormously in what comes next. The current information environment is chaotic and unreliable. What survives the transition, in terms of the record of what we knew, is going to be what individual Umanas have carefully saved. Save it. Do not assume the digital systems will preserve it for you. Have physical copies of what matters. Have offline copies. Have redundant copies. This is your work. If you are an alad, decide what you will guard. Choose carefully. The wrong thing to guard, in a moment of transition, is the ordinary institutions that are collapsing. Those need to collapse. Guarding them is a waste of your design. The right thing to guard is the people and the values that will come through the transition and be needed on the other side. Your family, your community, the vulnerable people who cannot defend themselves, the knowledge and tradition that the Umanis are preserving, the end priests and adapas who will be doing important work but cannot protect themselves while doing it. Those are your legitimate objects of protection in the coming years. Choose them and guard them well. If you are an Atemu, turn toward the presence you carry. Do not fight it. Do not pretend it is not there. Do not medicate it away if you can help it. The presence has something to give you, and something to give through you. The work of the Atemu in the coming age is to complete what the ancestors did not complete, and to bring their unfinished business to some kind of resolution. This is deeply valuable work. It heals the bloodline. It clears the field. And in a moment when a lot of accumulated ancestral material is going to be shaken loose by the transition, the Atemu who has done this work will be one of the most stable people in the room. If you are a Zakik, do not hide. This is going to be difficult advice for many of you, because hiding has been survival for a very long time, but the age that is coming needs you visible. Not necessarily in a public way, but in a way that lets other Zakik find you, that lets the outside speak through you when it needs to, that lets your mission, whatever it turns out to be actually enacted rather than kept private forever. Find the small number of people who can receive what you carry and share it with them. Let what comes through you come through. That is your work. There is one more thing the tablets say, and I want to make sure you hear it. The 9 types are not competing. They are complementary. The picture the tablets give of a healthy civilization is not one type ruling and the others serving. It is all 9 types functioning in their proper roles, contributing what only they can contribute, and receiving from the others what they cannot generate themselves. The Lulu feeds everyone. The Igigi descendant explores what the Lulu cannot explore. The Adapa translates what neither of them can perceive alone. The end priest holds the connection to what is above. The Shar organizes the whole into a functioning system. The Umanu remembers what the whole has learned. The Alad protects it from what would destroy it. The Atemu heals what the ancestors could not heal, and the Zakik brings in what is beyond the whole, from outside the whole, to keep the whole from becoming static and dying. That is the picture. That is what the tablets say a healthy human civilization looks like. And nothing on Earth has looked like that in the whole recorded history of the last 5,000 years. Because in the age of the Shar, only the Shar has been fully allowed to be itself. The other 8 types have been distorted, suppressed, or forced into roles that do not fit them. The result has been a civilization that produces enormous material achievement and enormous individual suffering, both at the same time, because the design is out of balance. If the coming age produces the balance the tablets describe, it will be the first time in 5,000 years that human civilization has functioned as it was originally intended to function. Whether or not it produces that balance depends on many things, most of which are beyond any individual's control. But one thing is within your control, and that is whether you, personally, are fully yourself in your type. Whether you allow your design to do what it was made to do, whether you stop torturing yourself for not being some other type and start being the type you are as completely as you can. That is the practical application of everything I have told you tonight. Not intellectual understanding, application. Live your type. All the way. Do the work only your design can do. Trust the frequency you are tuned to, and let the age come. There is one final piece I want to give you before we close. Because I keep referring to the transition, the 7th reset, the 8th reset, the events that end the current cycle. And I do not want to leave you without something more concrete about what those actually are, based on what the tablets do say. The tablets, taken as a whole, describe 7 previous resets. The exact nature of each one differs. Some were physical catastrophes, floods, earthquakes, celestial events. Some were what the tablets call the closing, meaning a sudden change in what humans were able to perceive and access. Some were social, political, systemic collapses that took generations to complete. What they all have in common is that they marked the end of one dominant type and the rise of the next. And what they all have in common is that they were preceded by specific signs, which the tablets list in various places. Those signs are the subject of the document I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the one called the 7 Resets. That document walks through each of the 7 previous resets in detail, lists the signs that preceded each one, and then compares those signs to what is happening now. It also lists the specific signs that the tablets say will precede the 8th reset, the one that ends the current cycle entirely. 4 of those signs, according to the analysis in that document, are already active, which means if the analysis is right, we are already inside the beginning of the transition, not approaching it. Inside it, I am not going to walk through the details here, because the whole point of that document is that it deserves careful reading, not a quick summary. If you have not looked at it yet, look at it. The link is below. The QR code has been on screen. This is your last chance in this video to grab it. What you have learned tonight about the 9 types is directly connected to what is in that document. The 2 documents belong together. Reading them together is how you get the full picture. And getting the full picture matters, if the transition is what the tablets say it is. Now let me bring this to a close. Before I close, I want to walk you through a few more specific things that have come up repeatedly in the tablets and in the interpretive tradition around them, and that I think you deserve to hear before this video ends. The first is the question of what happens when 2 types marry and have children, because this is one of the most important practical questions for anyone trying to work with this framework, and the tablets have specific things to say about it. When a Lulu marries a Lulu, the children are almost always Lulu. This is the most stable pairing, and it produces the most predictable outcomes. The children fit their culture, fit their family, and generally live lives that are recognizable to everyone around them. The vast majority of human marriages, historically, have been Lulu-Lulu, and this is one of the reasons civilization has been able to function at scale. The Lulu-Lulu pairing produces a stable population base. When a Lulu marries an Igigi descendant, the children are mixed. Some come out Lulu, some come out Igigi descendant. The proportion depends on many factors that are not fully understood. But what tends to happen is that the Igigi descendant traits express more strongly if there are already multiple generations of Igigi descendant blood in the family line. If the Lulu parent is pure Lulu and the Igigi descendant parent is a first-generation carrier, the children usually come out Lulu, with Igigi descendant traces. If the Igigi descendant carries deep lineage, the children more often come out Igigi descendant, with Lulu traces. When a Lulu marries an Adapa, the situation is more complex. The Adapa traits require specific conditions to fully express, and those conditions do not always occur even when the genetic material is present. So, Lulu Adapa children often present as Lulu, but with an unusually rich inner life, and sometimes with specific Adapa capacities that only emerge under stress or in particular life circumstances. Some Lulu Adapa children live entire lives as apparent Lulus and only discover their Adapa nature in old age. Others express it from early childhood. There is no reliable way to predict. When any of the elevated types marry another of the elevated types, the children carry very strong traits of both parents. 2 N priests will produce children who are almost certainly N priests, and often extraordinary ones. 2 Adapas will produce children who are almost certainly Adapas, and again, often at unusual levels of capacity. 2 Shars will produce children who are Shars, but the 2 Shar family, as I mentioned earlier, is famously turbulent, and the children often grow up in an environment of intense competition that shapes them in specific ways. The pairings that produce the rarest outcomes are the ones involving the 8th and 9th types. When an Etemu marries any other type, the children are often Etemu, or carry strong Etemu traits, because the ancestral presence tends to preserve itself across generations. When a Zakik marries any other type, the outcomes are unpredictable. Sometimes the children are Zakik. Sometimes they are entirely ordinary. Sometimes they are one thing at birth and become another later in life. The Zakik bloodline does not follow the same rules as the others, because the outside does not follow the same rules. The tablets encourage awareness of these dynamics but do not prescribe which pairings should happen and which should not. Different pairings serve different functions. What they discourage strongly is pairings in which one partner does not know what the other is, because the mismatch, unrecognized, produces suffering across generations. The Lulu, who does not know they married an Adapa, will spend decades not understanding why their spouse is so strange. The Adapa, who does not know they married a Shar, will spend decades being crushed by expectations they cannot meet. The N priest, who does not know they married a Zakik, will spend decades trying to translate what cannot be translated. Recognition, in the tablets, is the beginning of health. Without recognition, even the most compatible pairing becomes a source of confusion. The second thing I want to walk you through is what the tablets say about children. Because the identification of a child's type is one of the most important things a parent can do, and most modern parents have no framework for it at all. The tablets say that the type of a child becomes visible within the first 3 years of life, if you know what to look for. The Lulu child is grounded, physical, curious about the immediate environment, forming attachments to specific people, learning practical skills quickly, and comfortable in routines. The Igigi descendant child is restless from early on, asks unusual questions, has vivid dream reports, seems drawn to skies and stars, and often shows signs of the searching temperament before they even have language for it. The Adapa child is quiet, watchful, seems older than their age, is often sensitive to noise and crowds, and has moments of unusual knowing that surprise the adults around them. The Unpriest child is often described by parents as an old soul, is drawn to comforting others, forms deep attachments to specific caregivers or teachers, and shows early signs of the calling. The Shar child takes charge in the playground, organizes their siblings and cousins, is comfortable being the leader in every group, and shows the composed face even in childhood. The Umanu child loves books early, memorizes things easily, corrects other people's information, and is often described as unusually precise for their age. The Alad child is protective of smaller children and animals, notices threats that others miss, is often physically confident early, and shows the watching quality even at play. The Atemu child seems older than their age in ways that are hard to describe, may have imaginary friends who are unusually specific, may talk about things they have not been told about, and often has a strong attachment to a specific ancestor or ancestral place. The Zakik child is the strangest, often has vivid perceptions that other children do not have, may be delayed in speech but unusually alert, and often has a quality that other children can feel but not articulate. If parents can identify a child's type early, they can raise the child in a way that supports the design rather than distorts it. The Sumerian tradition placed enormous emphasis on this. In the ancient world, a family with an Adapa child would consult the temple. A family with a Zakik child would consult a specific class of priests trained to work with the type. A family with a Shar child would begin training in leadership skills from an early age. Modern parents mostly have no framework for any of this. So, the Adapa child is medicated for sensitivity. The Shar child is punished for taking charge. The Zakik child is diagnosed with a spectrum disorder, and so on. The type is not honored, the design is not supported, and the child grows up in a state of chronic mismatch with what they were made to be. If you have children, and you are working with this framework, watch them. Watch what they do naturally when no one is guiding them. Watch what they seek out. Watch what they retreat from. Watch what they say when they think no one is listening. The type will show. And once you see it, you can begin to build the life around them that gives their design room to become what it is. This is one of the most useful applications of the whole framework, and it is available to anyone who has a child in their care. The third thing I want to walk you through is the question of how the types interact in workplaces, in communities, in organizations. Because most people spend most of their adult lives in some kind of collective structure, and the pattern of how the types show up in those structures explains a lot about why some structures work and some do not. A functioning organization, according to the tablets, needs at least 3 of the 9 types to be present in significant numbers. It needs Lulus to do the base work. It needs at least 1 Shar to organize the whole. And it needs at least 1 Umanu to keep the records. Without any one of these 3, the organization becomes dysfunctional. Without Lulus, nothing gets done at the ground level. Without a Shar, no decisions get made. Without an Umanu, the memory of the organization deteriorates, and the same mistakes are made repeatedly. Beyond these 3 foundational types, the organization benefits from the presence of others. An Alad or 2 provides security. An N-Priest provides emotional cohesion in difficult times. An Adapa provides insight into problems that the Shar cannot solve by ordinary means. An Igigi descendant brings new ideas. An Itemu carries institutional memory in a form that goes beyond written records. And a Zakik, when one is present, brings in ideas from outside the organization's ordinary field of vision. This last is often disruptive, but occasionally revolutionary. Many of the greatest innovations in organizational history have come from Zakikus, who somehow ended up inside an organization long enough to speak. The dysfunction of many modern organizations can be traced to imbalance in the type distribution. Organizations that are all Shar and all Umanu, with no Adapa, no N-Priest, no Zakik, become brittle and lifeless. They can execute known plans efficiently but cannot adapt when the environment changes. Organizations that have too many Zakikus and not enough Umanus produce lots of ideas but cannot preserve or execute any of them. Organizations that have Shars but no Alads become vulnerable to internal betrayal. And so on. Every dysfunction in every organization can be diagnosed, if you know the framework, by asking which types are missing or overrepresented. This is why the tablets say, in one of the more practical passages, that the wise leader gathers around themselves a full representation of the types. The wise Shar, in ancient practice, would have an end-priest to advise on spiritual matters, an Umanu to advise on precedent and record, an Alad to advise on security, an Adapa to advise on hidden currents, and, if possible, a Zakik accessible for consultation on matters that fell outside all the other categories. This was considered the model of good rule. Not one type dominating all the others, but one type organizing the whole and receiving from each of the others what they alone could bring. Modern organizational thinking has begun to approach this idea, though usually without the ancient framework. The current interest in cognitive diversity, in different learning styles, in different personality types, in different intelligences, is fumbling toward what the Sumerians already had. The Sumerians had a specific and detailed model. Modern thinking has vague and often contradictory models. But the impulse is the same. Recognition that people are not interchangeable, that different kinds of contribution are needed, that trying to force everyone into the same mold produces dysfunction rather than efficiency. If you are in a position to influence how an organization is structured, you can apply this framework. You do not need to talk about the ancient Sumerian tablets in your quarterly review. You can simply notice which types are present, which are missing, and adjust the mix. Bring in the missing types. Give the underused types more room. Notice when someone is being asked to function as a type they are not, and either move them into a role that fits their type, or find someone else for the role they are currently in. These small adjustments produce large results, over time, because they align the design of the individuals with the requirements of the work. The fourth thing I want to walk you through is the question of aging. Because the 9 types age differently, and the aging pattern says something about the design that is not obvious in the middle of a working life. The Lulu ages predictably. The body wears down at a normal rate. The mind stays practical throughout. The Lulu in old age is a repository of practical wisdom. When a Lulu dies, the community loses someone who has been running the daily infrastructure of life for decades. This loss is felt at the ground level, in 100 small ways. The Igigi descendant ages inconsistently. Some remain searchers into old age, still restless, still moving, still questioning. Others settle in late life into a kind of resigned peace, having accepted that the search will not be completed in this lifetime. Both patterns are valid expressions of the type. The Igigi descendant on their deathbed is often the one who says, "Well, I still do not know, but it has been an interesting ride." The Adapa ages into their power. The Adapa is often not fully themselves until late in life, because the design requires accumulated experience to fully develop. The old Adapa is often the wisest person in the community, sought out for counsel, respected for their perception. They often live to great age, though they may become physically frail, and their bodies often signal them when it is time to go. The end priest ages either into deep peace or into burnout, depending on how well they have managed their connection through life. The end priest, who has kept the connection open, ages into a kind of luminosity that other people can feel from a distance. The end priest, who has burned out, ages into bitterness and exhaustion. Both patterns are common, and the difference between them is often visible early, even when the end priest is still in middle age. The Shar ages into a specific kind of loneliness, unless they have specifically prepared for old age. The Shar who has ruled without preparing for the loss of the throne often finds old age unbearable. The Shar who has trained a successor, transferred authority gracefully, and built a private life alongside the public role often ages well, becoming a respected elder statesman whose advice is sought by the current rulers. The Umanu ages into their fullest expression. The old Umanu is often the most useful they have ever been, having accumulated decades of knowledge and refined their judgment about which knowledge matters. They often live long, work into extreme old age, and die with a book or a manuscript in progress on their desk. The Alad ages either into wise elder guardian or into frustrated aggression, depending on how they have used their design. The Alad who has served well finds an honored place in old age, respected as one who kept the people safe. The Alad who was never given a proper role for their guarding energy often becomes bitter, sometimes physically violent, sometimes just endlessly angry at the world. The Atemu ages in a particular way. Because they have been carrying more than one life for much of their existence, they often reach old age, feeling as if they have already lived a long time. Some Atemu, in old age, become uncanny presences in their communities, deeply respected but also slightly feared because the ancestor within them speaks more openly as the boundary between the current life and what came before becomes more permeable. The Zakik ages in whatever way the outside chooses. Some die young, some live to extreme old age. The Zakik's lifespan often does not follow the ordinary patterns, because the ordinary patterns do not fully apply to them. The old Zakik, when there is one, is often revered by the small number of people who have understood what they carry, and their deaths are often marked by unusual events, which the tablets note but do not fully explain. If you have elders in your life, watch them. Their type will be visible in how they age, and if you can identify their type, you can support them better in the last chapter of their lives. Because what an aging Lulu needs is different from what an aging Adapa needs, which is different from what an aging Zakik needs. Modern culture, which tends to warehouse all elders in similar facilities and provide them with similar care, misses these differences at enormous cost. Traditional cultures took the differences seriously. The dying process of each type was understood to have its own rhythm, its own needs, its own honors. We have lost most of this. We can, if we choose, begin to recover some of it. The fifth and final thing I want to walk you through is the question of what to do with this framework, practically starting now. The first thing to do is identify your own type. Really identify it. Not the type you wish you were. Not the type your family expected you to be. The type you actually are. Use the questions I have given you throughout this video. Use the stress test I gave you a moment ago. Use whatever internal signal you have that tells you when something fits. Sit with it. Let the answer emerge. Do not rush it, but do not indefinitely postpone it either. Get to the answer. The second thing to do is to look at your current life and ask, how much of what I am doing is aligned with my type and how much is not? Be honest with yourself here. Many people, when they do this exercise, discover that a majority of their daily life is misaligned. This is not a cause for despair. It is a starting point. You cannot correct what you have not identified. The third thing to do is to begin, gradually, to shift your life toward alignment. This does not mean quitting your job tomorrow. This does not mean divorcing your spouse. This means beginning to make small adjustments that move you closer to what your design was made for. Over time, these small adjustments compound. Within a few years, most people who commit to this process find that their lives look substantially different and feel substantially better. The fourth thing to do is to look at the people around you and try to identify their types. This is a delicate task, because most people do not know their type and may resent being told what they are. But you can hold your assessments privately and let them inform how you interact with each person. The Lulu in your life needs one thing. The Adapa in your life needs something else. The Shar in your life needs a third thing. Adjusting your interactions based on type produces significantly better relationships across the board. The fifth thing to do is to make peace with the fact that most people you meet will not know their type, will not know your type, and will make assumptions about you that are based on the wrong framework. This is unavoidable in the current culture. You cannot educate everyone. You can, however, refuse to internalize their misperceptions. When someone treats you as a type you are not, notice it, do not accept it, and return to your own understanding of who you are. The sixth thing to do is to notice, over time, how the current culture is changing in relation to this framework. As the age of the Shar comes to its end, you will see the other types beginning to have more room, more recognition, more legitimate function. You will see the framework of pure materialism, which has been suppressing recognition of the elevated types, beginning to weaken. You will see, in your own community, in your own workplace, in your own family, small shifts that add up over years. Notice them. They are the signal that the transition is proceeding. The seventh and final thing to do is to know that you are not alone. Whatever type you are, there are others. They may be scattered, they may be hard to find, but they exist in every population, in every era, and they are your true kin. If you find one, honor the connection. If you build a small community of those who understand what you are, that community will be one of the most valuable things you have in the years ahead. That is the framework. That is the practical application. That is what you can do, starting today, with what you have learned. Let me leave you with the last thing the tablets say. In the closing fragment of the document that catalogs the 9 types, there is a line that has been translated many different ways, and the exact meaning is still argued about. But the sense of it, in every translation, is close to this. The design was given so that each one would know their place, not to be limited by it, but to be freed by it. When you know your place, the tablet says, you can stand in it fully. When you do not know your place, you are always in someone else's, and you can never stand. Stand in your place. That is what the tablets ask of you, in the plainest words they use. Not to be something you are not, and not to apologize for being what you are. Not to compete with types that were made for other functions. Not to torture yourself for not fitting a design you were not built for. just to be what you are, as fully as you can, in the time you have. The age is turning. You know it. Everyone knows it. What comes next is uncertain in its details, but clear in its shape. There will be resets. There will be changes that shake what has been stable. There will be, at some point, the eighth, which is either the end or the beginning of something new. And your best preparation for any of it is to be yourself, to know your type, to live it out, to take your place. The tablets have been waiting 6,000 years for you to read them. They are still waiting for the ones who have not read them yet. If what you heard tonight resonated, share it. The others of your type are out there. Some of them are just now beginning to wonder what they are. What you say to them, in the next few years, may be what they needed to hear to find themselves. That is not a small thing. That is, in fact, one of the most important things any of us can do now. Thanks for staying with all this. Take care of yourself. Take care of the people who need you. And whatever type you are, whatever design you have, whatever frequency your consciousness is tuned to, know that you were made for this moment. You are exactly where you were always meant to be. And what you do next matters more than anyone will tell you.